All right, we are live. Welcome, guys.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome to Capturing Christianity.
Oh,
Are you guys humming? What's happening?
wrong channel. Sorry.
Wrong channel.
I was going to do my intro, but yeah.
Yeah, AP always hums an
he
always hums an intro, and people think that it's some recorded music, but it's just him humming.
Yeah.
him humming in the background.
Yeah.
Well, as you guys can see on the screen here, we're responding to Rhett and Alex on the resurrection. There was a interview that happened on Alex O'Connor's channel, Cosmic Skeptic, with a guy named Rhett McLaughlin. I don't even know how to pronounce his last name. McLaughlin.
Oh,
He's a
really?
very famous. He's a very famous
McLovin.
YouTuber, though. McLovin. Very famous YouTuber over at. Now I'm completely blanking. Ear Biscuits, I think, is one of their podcasts. Anyways, he's got a lot.
How can he be
of,
famous if I've never heard of him?
Yeah, that's impossible, right?
Yeah, he must cover stuff I don't pay attention to.
I need to look up his name. Let's see, Rhett. This is like the best way to start a live stream.
And guys, let me tell you about this topic, which I actually have.
Which I don't know anything about.
Whatever.
Amateur hour.
Well, what we're gonna do in this live stream is go through some clips from this interview, and it's gonna be amazing. We're gonna talk about the resurrection. We're gonna talk about double standards in apologetics. We're gonna talk about bias. These are all very fascinating topics. You guys are gonna love this stream. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
Nice.
I would hand it over to you guys to give me some of your thoughts before we begin, but you guys haven't even seen this. So
That is correct.
We're just going to start playing it.
Yeah, haven't seen this. It's like, hey, David and AP, did you watch the movie before you went and watched it? No. Why would we do that? Watch it now.
Yep. That's how it goes.
Yeah, my thoughts are just that McLovin is kind of a weird name, yeah. But I don't know anything about him, so
There's something about him that's like kind of beautiful though. Like he's got this
He's kinda
like,
cool
really
looking.
beautiful hair. His his outfits and stuff
like a
look pretty
lion.
cool.
A
Yes,
mane
like
like
a
a
lion.
lion, and a
Yes.
super dope beard. This guy could
Yeah.
play in some movie about Jesus.
Yeah. He's
But not
actually
anymore.
really funny too. Like if you watch his Good Mythical Morning, there it is. That's the show that like he's most well known for. Good Mythical Morning. If you watch his stuff, like it's kid friendly. It's like fun little gigs and gags. That's not a term. Fun little skits that they do. But he's really cool. He's but he deconstructed, so now he's the enemy. You know, we have to come on here and debunk him.
Humiliated. Look at that stupid hair. Sorry.
Look at that big nose. That nose.
Dumb
wasn't he in
beard.
the
got the-
Viking series? Probably not.
Yeah, I know. Oh, you know what we should do is cover the super chat first. So let's do that before we start the first clip. This one, AP's first Capturing Christianity live stream as a Christian. How does it feel, AP?
Very good, very good. We were just talking about it before we went live about how I should be making a much bigger deal out of it, but I'm not, and I'm just going like, yeah, whatever, yeah, I'm Christian. So,
Yeah.
I should be going around saying, hey guys, did you know I'm a Christian now? Did you know I believe now? Let me know what you want me to do next as a Christian. Hey, do this, and I will do that as a Christian, and I will read this passage, and I will read this prayer. Woohoo!
And if you sign up for 100 new members on Patreon, I'll share with you what I prayed for this morning, and I'll pray for you too. How you doing,
But of course, I'm not doing it because I'm just I'm famously known to be
You're
to be a very humble person, and
I did see actually that you got debunked by Matt Dillhoney
Oh, yeah.
on
Humiliated.
Twitter. That was
Unfortunately.
you got wrecked.
Since then,
Correct.
you can see that I have been pretty quiet since Matt Dillahunty he kind of destroyed me. So
He shut you down. Yeah, you're like you're almost atheist again, right?
Yeah, here. AP's been rustling with this stuff for a while, but then Matt's like, "Oh, you were never a real skeptic," and AP's like, "Oh no, maybe I made a terrible choice."
Yeah, you got destroyed pretty badly.
Yeah.
All right, let's go ahead and watch this first clip. Got his beautiful hair back up on the screen. All right, so in this first clip, he's talking about like the Old Testament and how he started to sort of shift his views on the Old Testament. This is like the sort of beginning phase of his deconstruction. We're not talking about evolution in this show. I actually talked about that in a previous video that I did. That was like the first sort of domino, as he puts it, in his deconstruction. But he starts talking about the Old Testament. His views started shifting here. And then he talks about sort of bias. And let's just watch it. Let's watch this clip.
Because it got into biblical scholarship after that. It got into, okay, well, the primeval history. This is, I guess this is allegory. Like this didn't happen. These are religious myths that were adapted from other myths that were around at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
The flood didn't happen.
Yeah.
The Tower of Babel is a weird explanation for language. I started seeing all that, and so I was like, okay, now my entire view of the beginning of the Bible is different. And again, I would go to the Apologetics answer, and I would be like, one person seems to be, like the critical scholars actually seem to be like interested in what happened. Like, why did these people write this? Why is it like this? Where did this idea come from? And then the Christian apologists seem to be like, well, we know it's God's word, so how do we prove it?
Mm-hmm. Boom. So the Christian apologist, if you're a Christian apologist, you don't care about truth. You just want to defend what you grew up believing. Is that you, David?
No, and I don't even know who he's talking about, unless he's talking about like apologetics from the 80s or something like that, 1980s. Was that? He doesn't seem that old. How old is he?
I don't know.
I don't see a head full of gray. So how old is he? Who's he talking about? This kind of reminds me of like when you hear an atheist testimony and they're like, so I was confused by this, so I went to my pastor and he couldn't answer me, so I just said, wow, no one's got the answer, and then I left. Now, keep in mind, I know he's not, because I know you said it's like a first stepping stone and so on. But
right.
You wonder. I don't know what apologists he's talking about, because apologists tend to take this stuff very seriously and look into it and come up with all kinds of different perspectives. And then even at the scholarly Christian level, they do dig a lot into this and write entire books on this sort of thing. So,
He talking about you, David. He talking about you. Why not answering the question? No, the thing is, it kind of sounds like it's kind of confusing, because this, I don't mean to criticize what he just said. I don't mean to really, put a word in on any of that kind of stuff. But it kind of sounds like how the new atheist sphere was talking back in the day. Like, I don't know, a long time ago, like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Like these were the popular narratives in the new atheist sphere 10 years ago. But what about the flood? And what about the Tower of Babel? Don't make sense, and so on.
Hey, one second. Hold up. Cameron, you're using Ecamm?
Yes.
How come yours is so much cooler than mine? Is this like stuff that if I actually learned how to use it, I could do?
Yes.
You see this, AP? He's using the exact same program I use, but his is like way cooler and fancier.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right. Maybe I have to. It's funny because I signed up for a course on it once, and then I just didn't do it. Anyway.
Yeah. I mean, it's not hard. It's just like overlays and stuff. I can teach you.
That's what I always do. I sign up for courses and I just don't do them.
Never take them.
Yeah, I'm always like, hey, I need to take this course. That's cool. And I forget.
Okay. I actually wrote down what he says. He says he also, critical scholars are trying to get at the truth, while apologists are trying to defend what they want to believe. I mean, built into this is like the idea that the critical scholars are the ones who not just care about truth, but don't really have the biases that like apologists have. I can't really relate to this. I've had to think long and hard. Like, as someone who's gone through a conversion, and AP, you can probably relate to this too. David, you as well. Like, all three of us can relate to this. Like, if you go through a conversion, like, in a lot of ways, you have to care about the truth, right? You have to be focused on it, because there's a lot of practical reasons that are pushing you in the other direction, right? Like, to stay where you're at makes it a lot more, it makes it easier to kind of live your life like you were. And so, and then like, what is the benefit of like believing true stuff? Like sometimes there's not a ton of benefit there. It's like you believe something that's true, or you like seek the truth, even though it sort of might make your life more difficult. I've had to like struggle with that myself. Like, why am I doing this? Like, why am I trying to seek the truth? But I mean, it's going to sound sort of like self-congratulatory, but I really do believe that I'm seeking the truth. Like there's obviously like everyone deals with bias, but just because you're an apologist doesn't mean that you're not seeking the truth. Thank you guys.
No, and yeah, and as far as that, these guys seek the truth, but these guys don't. That's just silly. Everyone, there's a similarity with that everyone shares. Everyone shares. Whatever position you adopt, you think that that's where the evidence points and that's where the truth is. But
Right.
then you'll have these issues that can be in conflict with that, and you're not sure what to do with them. But you're thinking, okay, well, I've got the correct position because of this, and this. So what happens when something is in conflict with that? Well, even if I don't know the answer, I think there must be an answer, and so I'll look for the answer. And generally, whatever your position, whether you're an atheist, a Muslim, a Christian, whoever, you're thinking, oh, okay, well, this is the correct position. So here's something that doesn't quite fit. And when you're going to that issue, you're kind of looking for how it fits. How does it fit into this overall position? So if you were an atheist and you said, it is, these Christians or these theists or whatever are using an argument from fine tuning. And it is kind of strange that all these features of the universe turned out so that they actually support life. So what do I do with that? Because that does seem like something that God would do, but why did things turn out like that? Well, what are you doing? You're looking for an answer that kind of doesn't involve God because you're an atheist. That doesn't mean you're just opposed to that and you're like, oh, the people of the truth, they go where the evidence points, and I just try to explain that away. That can be the case, but generally, if you're a sincere atheist, you think that you've got the truth, and here's some evidence that sort of points in a different direction. Or suppose someone presents evidence for the resurrection of Jesus or something like that, and you say, okay, well, let me try to explain. Generally, you're trying to explain it in a way that fits with atheism. Why? Because you think that the totality, the main part of the evidence points towards atheism.
Mm-hmm.
That atheism is the best explanation for things, and so you're trying to account for these other things that may be in conflict with that. That doesn't mean that you're not out for the truth. It just means you think this is the truth. And so what happens when other evidence comes along that seems to disconfirm some part of that? Well, you look for a way to reconcile that with your position. That's what atheists do. That's what Christians do. That's what Muslims do. You get to a conversion point where the things become so kind of overwhelming that you're like, actually, I don't think that this is true anymore because there's too many things it doesn't account for. I need to change my position so that it actually accounts for more of the evidence that I'm confronted with. So that's what's happening. But I mean, well, yeah, I don't know why he thinks that Christians are in some sort of different camp. And if you're a Christian apologist, it means you don't care about the truth, and you got to go to the critical scholars because they're the ones that don't have the biases, and they're the ones you can look to.
Yeah, the critical scholarship as well. Like, there's going to be social factors that are going to influence them in ways that would make them avoid looking at certain hypotheses or entertaining certain hypotheses, like the more conservative ones or the more historical hypothesis of the Old Testament. They're going to have these sorts of social pressures in their community to be very skeptical, to adopt these sorts of allegorical interpretations. Like, there's going to be social pressures to sort of fit in with the other scholars that are in the area. So there can be pressures, and ultimately what everyone is trying to do is like remain as truthful as possible and remain as unbiased as possible, but it affects everybody, like in every area of discourse, not just in religion. It also affects politics. Like, that's a huge one. Pretty much any area where there's controversy, there's people on both sides, there's going to be social pressures pulling you each way. There's going to be, cognitive biases that are going to be getting in the way, and you're constantly going to be fighting that, no matter if you're a scholar, because there's scholars on both sides. Like, that was one other point, is that there's like someone like a Craig Keener, and here I'm talking really about the New Testament, but there's going to be, Craig Keener publishes, he's peer-reviewed academic scholar, and yet he's very conservative in his views. So it's like, just because you're a scholar doesn't mean that you're going to land on this side or this side of the issue. Everybody's dealing with this problem. So it's, in essence, if it's a problem for everyone, it's a problem for no one. Like, everyone has to deal with this. Yeah.
And along those lines, because you're mentioning like critical scholars, like, it's not just, critical scholars have an environment where certain ideas are kind of going to be not on the table. You're not allowed to treat these as live hypotheses and so on. But it's like, that's what they're trained to do. If you're a critical scholar, you went through your entire academic work. In other words, as you're going through your master's and your PhD, you're surrounded by people who are saying, these are the views you're allowed to adopt, and these are the ideas you're not allowed to adopt. And so, just as an example, something like the dating of Mark, right? So if you just went with like internal evidence in the gospel accounts and stuff like this, like when do these seem to be written, you'd get a way earlier date for Mark, like probably 50s or something like that, because you've got the best sort of place you can place the book of Acts is, looks like it was written by around 62, but that's part 2 of Luke Acts. So Luke would be like a year or 2 earlier, something like that. But then Luke incorporates parts of Mark. And so it looks like Mark had to be around in the 50s at the latest. But if you're a critical scholar, Jesus predicts the destruction of the temple in Mark, and you're saying, okay, that happened in 70 AD. There's no way he could have predicted that. Therefore, this must have been written after it actually happened. And so you are ruling out you're ruling out the supernatural explanation because that's off limits. 2, you're not even going to entertain an earlier date, even though I'm of the view that it wouldn't actually require supernatural knowledge. You could just look at the Romans and go, here's what the Romans would do. They're pretty similar to the Babylonians. The Babylonians destroyed our temple. I think the Romans do the same thing too. So but you're just not even allowed to entertain that. You can't entertain an earlier date. Even if you had all kinds of evidence for an earlier date, it's just, no, that's off limits here. And so it's not like these guys are just the objective, unbiased truth seekers and so on. It's everyone has certain presuppositions going into a position. Everyone thinks they're right about certain things. And when something else is confronting you that gives a different perspective, there's going to be some pushback about that because if it doesn't fit with what you're talking about. And guess what? That's totally normal. It's not like the Christian apologist is the odd one here.
Yeah, and skepticism is like praise. It's like you get sort of accolades, and if you're skeptical about these hypotheses, there's way less pressure to express skepticism in these areas in the scholarly community. There's way less, there's I guess more to gain if you do that than there is to try and defend a position. Like, just in general, it's really hard to defend a position. If you're going to get it, like, apologists have a very tough time. Like, we're the ones who are getting up and saying, hey, look, guys, this is true. Here are the reasons. It's much easier to poke holes and express skepticism about someone's claim. And if you look at the Bible, that these are claims being made. And so, yeah, it's way easier to do that. And there are benefits to doing that in the scholarly community. So just to kind of flesh that out a little bit further, but let's continue here where he's talking in this next section about evolution and how, I might just skip it. It's not even really that necessary. It's just Alex talking about evolution, how it leads us to think that we're not as special as we thought we were. I don't know that we really need to cover it.
I guess
I know.
I guess rabbits are on YouTube having this conversation with Alex.
Yeah, it's like I didn't understand what his point was. Like, what we can play it if you want to hear it, but otherwise I can move on. What do you think?
It's your show, sir. It's your show.
All right, let's play it and just listen to a little bit of it.
It's like, this happened. This was years, right? Because I was like, well, I'm not going to stop believing in Jesus. You can have these weird ideas about the Old Testament, but like, Jesus is different. I mean, I have a personal relationship with him, and and that stuff's true, right? The stuff about the resurrection, my arguments for why the resurrection had happened, and it being the best explanation for the beginning of the church and all this. I'd like had those arguments in my back pocket. But long story short, eventually those arguments fell victim to the same type of critique. They're a little bit different, because I do think that there is a more interesting conversation around the resurrection because you can kind of know a little bit less about what happened. And you can be somebody who believes all this stuff about that I might agree with related to evolution, but then be like, I have a faith position that Jesus actually rose from the dead.
Mm-hmm.
I recognize that I can't, it's not a scientific thing. I can't prove it. It is a little bit different category. But it opened me up to questioning these sacred ideas. And it's just the most sacred idea of all that Jesus was the Son of God who raised from the dead, eventually was the last domino to fall.
Wow. And how does that finally fall? I mean, because the evolution thing confronts, and I think the reason why it was so scandalous in the 19th century is kind of just a vibe shift, right? Because when you speak to philosophically minded Christians, they will quite correctly say, there is no argumentative syllogism you can construct which shows that because animals have a common ancestor, therefore God doesn't exist. That doesn't follow. There's no argument you can make from that. But it's hard to put into words just like the feeling. Again, it's like we were saying before about the indicating a direction of thought. When a society is based upon the idea that human beings are special and unique.
Yeah.
This idea...
Are you guys asleep yet?
No.
I think AP fell asleep. No.
Well, AP's lazy. Hey, just so you know, I've been so massively sleep deprived this entire year. Like every once in a while, like every 10 or 12 days, I'll get like 8 hours. But other than that, I've been like 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 the entire year. Last night, I slept for 15 hours. Weirdest thing ever. 15 hours. So now is like the first time I'm really alert, like in months. And so I'm good to go, man.
You're ready to go. You're ready to go.
I'm ready, man. I feel clear for the first time.
So he's saying that evolution, like smart Christians will point out how there's no incompatibility with evolution and God's existence, but now he's trying to argue that there's like some like improbability maybe there. But let me continue.
I see where he's coming. I see where he's coming from. I think he's
well. Let me finish. Let me just finish this little part.
If you're smart, it doesn't need to undermine the idea that God exists, but it shows this direction of thought. Like, oh gosh, we're not as special as we thought we were, and where's that going to lead? I'm pretty sure that in the first edition of,
well, that's pretty much this whole point. Yeah, we're not as special as we thought we were. That's what evolution shows.
Again, I can see his point because if you believe that human beings are like specially created as this completely separate thing, in other words, we're in a completely different category from every other living thing. So God creates all the other living things, and then He creates us as this special thing. Okay, so you believe that, and then you find out, no, we're actually all connected. And he's pointing out this doesn't mean God doesn't exist. It's just, wait a minute, now we're not this completely unique thing. We're actually connected to everything else. So I get that point. I just think it's a pretty weak point, because as he's pointing out, this doesn't mean God doesn't exist. You just have to kind of revise your thinking about how God created human beings. And if, on the issue of evolution, there are lots of just interesting points packed into there where if you, just think, this is something like from way back in the day, but think about what you need for evolution to get started, to get off the ground, to even begin the process. You need a living cell. You need some sort of living cell. So how did you get that living cell? You need all kinds of information. You need a couple hundred proteins. Mathematically, just by chance, if you took the entire history of the universe, people have actually done the math. You could take the total number of particles in the universe, about 10 to the 80th power atoms in the entire universe. And if you were to say that all these particles in the universe are interacting at the speed of light, they're not, but it's like an upper limit, right? So we'll say every particle in the universe, 10 to the 80th particles, interacting at the speed of light, that's an upper limit, for the entire duration of the universe from the Big Bang. You could do the math and say, okay, now we have the total number of possible particle interactions in the entire history of the universe. What can you actually get by chance? By chance, you're not even close to getting one medium length protein for one of these cells. You're not even going to get one of them by chance. It's too specific. You need hundreds of them for the simplest, not just the simplest life we have now, but the simplest life we could even imagine functioning as a living cell. And so, like, what are the odds that you get this? It's like it's like really, really improbable. And you don't just need proteins; you need all kinds of other things like the cell wall. And so, anyway, but let's grant that you get the first living cell. Just think about what kind of cell you need for evolution to get off the ground. Whenever this cell forms, it already has to have the ability to replicate itself. If you just had a living cell, you're not getting evolution. It has to make copies of itself. I mean, just imagine that. You got a laptop or something like this. You finally made a laptop and, it can actually make copies of itself. That would be pretty darn impressive, that you get something that functions as life, and just the first one can make copies of itself. But you need two other requirements. One, these copies can't be completely identical. Because if you had completely identical copies, in other words, it copied itself exactly, you wouldn't get variation for natural selection to act upon. So it needs to make copies of itself that aren't completely identical, but it can't be like wildly different, like it's just sloppy, or you wouldn't preserve the beneficial traits. So you need something very, very specific for this process to even get started. And then it needs those three features, and you need to get that all just by basically luck. And then from then on, you need everything else that happens in the history of evolution up until you get to these conscious, reflective beings who are able to examine the entire universe and draw conclusions based on it. But I mean, just every step of the way, going from single cells to multi-cells, and then eventually to animals and human beings and so on, and then getting a human type consciousness. It really, like, you could look at all that and say, wow, that's some serious evidence for God there. Like, look at that. It's almost like, like you read, in the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And the Word is just logos, which is like this rational principle and so on. And it's like, it looks like something is being fed into the system to eventually get to us. If that were the position you adopted. So I wouldn't count evolution as evidence against, I mean, the suffering component you could say that favors something else over the kind of theism that Christians have, but I wouldn't say that the process counts against the existence of God. And so I would agree with him. Yes, it doesn't rule out God, but I agree that there is this vibe shift. Like, you get a sort of different vibe from evolution than you do from just God creating human beings as these completely distinct things. But if you granted evolution, you would say that at some point in the history of organisms developing and so on, God makes these two offspring like his image, and that's where things get started for humans.
What you explained there is something that just kind of was on my mind for many years. It is. I just wanted to highlight one aspect there in what you just pointed out in the evolution. So, and I could actually say that this is very similar to when certain people like this guy, Rhett, when they come and say that there were certain things that didn't make sense to them and that they couldn't understand. And when they asked question, it seemed like people didn't have a proper explanation, and they went for one explanation that wasn't satisfying enough, and so on. But so if you sit down and come to accept the evolution of species, there is just one very, very big issue, which is very difficult to explain, as far as I understand, in evolutionary biology, which is the massive difference between humans and the most advanced non-human animal. There is a huge leap, a huge cognitive developmental gap between the most advanced non-human animals and humans. In fact, the gap between the non-human animals and humans is greater than the gap between the most advanced non-human animal and the second most advanced. It's not something that is very common that other species are so advanced as humans, that they completely differ in every way from the behaviors of others, and have so many unique abilities, so many unique features, so many unique specifications on how they eat, how they communicate, how they roam the earth, and so on. So humans clearly have a very, very distinct place in all of existence that we see around us. There is nothing quite like it. Maybe you could explain it by how humans, Homo sapiens, at some point went to a point where they cracked a certain aspect of evolution or development, which led them to skyrocket in development and cognitive development and so on. But these are just theories. These are just certain hypotheses to explain this discrepancy. But there is simply the fact that humans are much more advanced than anything else around us. And I have never been powerfully, wonderfully knowledgeable on every single aspect of evolution. I have always thought, okay, yeah, it seems quite plausible, the evolutionary process, but here is an issue, and as far as I understand it, as far as I see it, I think it's called the Great Leap Forward or something. This is a very, very problematic, a very difficult aspect in evolution that which people struggle to simply explain with the evolution of species that they have so far.
Yeah, let me AP is making an important point there that kind of goes back to what Alex is challenging there. Alex is like, oh, well, we're not as special as we are. It's like the most glaring fact of all of this is how special we are, right? The most glaring piece of evidence we have is how massively different human beings are from everything else. There are similarities and so on, but we are in just a completely different category given what we do, what we're capable of, and so on, how we think. And so it's like you can have that difference in any theistic account, whether you're arguing for young Earth creation, old Earth creation, theistic evolution, whatever your position is, you can actually account for it. You can actually account for why human beings are so different. If he's saying that evolution should make you think, well, we're not that unique, that would kind of be a problem for an atheistic view of evolution. If you were talking about atheistic evolution, it should kind of make you go, well, it kind of doesn't make sense for us to be so radically different if that perspective is correct. Like we shouldn't have gotten to a point where we're this radically different from everything else. So yeah, I think that would actually go against his position.
Powerful.
Yeah, I think both of you guys are onto something. The only thing I would add that we haven't really discussed is that to me, evolution is sort of like a sort of automated process, right? That's what we want to say about evolution. I guess there's two things to say about that. First is that automated processes can still imply design, like a factory, right? An automated factory still implies some sort of designer that made it. So there are arguments, there are philosophers, I've had them on my channel, who argue that evolution is nevertheless evidence for design. So that's the first point. But then the second point would be, so he's trying to say that because there's no sort of special creation, if God created the first human pair de novo, because there's no special creation here, that means that we're less special. And I guess I don't understand what the argument is supposed to really be, because to me, like, even if you've got an automated process, like the only way that we've got an automated process and not just pure chaos, on the other hand, is that we've got these natural laws. Where do those come from? Why does anything operate according to any sort of natural law in the first place? Why is there such thing as gravity holding these planets together, holding the animals to the planet that they happen to be on, holding in the atmosphere so that they can breathe and survive? Like, to me, all it does is push the problem maybe back a step. And
Correct.
We've still got to account for why evolution is there in the first place. And maybe that's kind of, David, what you were getting at, but I'm just kind of making it more explicit. Like, we still have to account for the laws themselves that govern evolution, that make evolution possible. So it's not just like the fundamental building blocks of evolution, like the first cell or anything like that. It's also just the more fundamental laws that govern the universe itself. Like, that is still extremely special, that we have these specific laws set up in this specific way such that evolution is possible in the first place and can produce beings like us, because we're here, right? Obviously.
Yeah.
But I mean, the fact that I think that we're here and these laws exist and everything, like, it's still very, 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 very special, even if there wasn't some, de novo creation event. Yeah. And that's all I wanted to add.
You could push it back even further, because this is my thinking. I've never made an argument out of this, but this goes back to like right before I converted. And when I talk about becoming a Christian, so I talk about the resurrection stuff, but I was also kind of wrestling with a kind of design argument, which was just a living cell. Like I'm looking around at this, looking around ironically at the cell I was in, and just thinking about the bricks stacked up and so on. And if someone told me these bricks went into this order for this cell by some natural process, wind and water erosion or something, I would think what an idiot. And yet I believe it about a living cell. And I just accepted that because my teacher said it in 10th grade. Mm-hmm. And so so that's how I describe it. So I was thinking about life, and then I was thinking about a kind of moral argument, and then of course the resurrection, and then became a Christian. But on the issue of life, I don't really explain it because it's kind of hard to explain, but it's more along the lines of what you were talking about. Like, in order to even have the possibility of life, it's like, if I were to name it, I would call it something like, I would call it the potency proof. Like at the very start of the universe, if you go back to that initial singularity, is life is already in potency, right? It's there, it's waiting. It's not like life is an impossibility. And human consciousness is a possibility. It's there, it's waiting to happen. It needs to be actualized. So there's the potency. That's the possibility is there. It can happen. It just hasn't happened. But it's like the potency there is actualized, and then it becomes all of this. So before anything actually started, there's human life is possible. It just needs to come together. All these things are possible. All our thoughts and so on, it's all there. It's just waiting. It's waiting to happen. But what actually happens is you get a universe, which could have been the universe could have been life permitting or non-life permitting. Chemistry could have been slightly different. If you didn't have something like carbon, or if carbon atoms had been slightly different, you're not getting anything within a million miles of us. So everything is in potency. It's all like there and waiting to happen, but then it actually happens. And the way everything turns out, it's you eventually get to the human consciousness, which was already there as a possibility, but just hadn't happened yet. And it's just amazing to me that you actually, all these things that are just a possibility back then, and then the universe forms in a way to where the actualization, all the steps that are necessary to get from just some brute possibility to getting to actually to us, that happened. And so I'm kind of thinking, it was a weird thought, but it was like, it looks like it was already, like we're already there in a sense of something that's waiting to happen. And it just looked completely different from a mindless thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it was Luke Barnes. I mean, Luke is great with the fine tuning stuff. He's got this really good analogy of like, if you were to, did you say nerd?
He's one of those science nerds.
He's a cosmologist, yeah, kind of a nerd.
Philosophers,
he's super funny and amazing.
Like, look at these nerds.
He had the analogy of like a tornado going through a like abandoned car,
junkyard,
one of those like junkyard, yeah, junkyard. And like building like this, or just like random pieces of metal, and a tornado blows through, and then somehow after the tornado goes through, it's like this beautiful car is like built. Like how no one would think that was just something that occurred by chance. Yep. Cool. All right. Christian Theologetics says, also Josh Swamidas has shown that Adam and Eve's de novo creation is compatible with evolution. That's true. Yes, he has shown that. All right. Let's continue the clips here. In this next one, they talk about so they get into resurrection stuff. They talk about the disciples and Rhett's theory about what happened to them. So,
I'm legitimately interested in this. If he has an alternative view of the resurrection.
Yeah, you're going to be very underwhelmed. Let's
really?
watch.
Oh, darn.
You need to respond to. But okay, there's that. And then there's the resurrection. That's not just like a vibe shift. This is the historical claim upon which Christianity is based.
We've
And like you say, it's less
You just said
accessible to the
Christianity is
scientific
based.
method.
He said it's based.
Cut that. Cut that.
He said Christianity is
Put
based.
that on the soundboard. Put that on the soundboard. Alex O'Connor, Christianity is based.
Go back a few
Based.
seconds.
And like
look
you
at that.
say, it's less accessible to the scientific method because it's a singular event.
Yeah.
It's not like a process that's still going on today that we can biologically observe. And
I backed up
you
too far,
can't
but-
scientifically or historically prove the resurrection, but you can prove like surrounding facts.
Yep.
You can say that Jesus was crucified, that his disciples claimed to see him, all of this kind of stuff. All of those arguments are still there and still sat in your mind. Presumably you're pretty familiar with them as someone
Yeah.
who specializes in outreach.
Or maybe I didn't back
Why
up
would
far
that
enough.
change? Like what shifts the dial on those kinds of arguments for
Ruined
you?
it. You lost the moment.
You need to
Did you say he
respond to.
specializes in outrage?
Yeah, I skipped. I didn't go back far enough. Let me
Such a
try one more
specialized
time, guys. This is important that we
Don't
nail
mess this up.
down. This is
We
extremely
want to hear Alex O'Connor
important.
say Christianity is based.
But okay, there's that. And then there's the resurrection. That's not just like a vibe shift. This is the historical claim upon which Christianity is based. And like you,
That's
I like
that's
that
so
little
perfect.
pause there.
That's so perfect. It's so
Christianity.
perfect the way you said it.
Is based.
No. Cameron, you don't understand how cool this is because AP has another clip from a Jewish rabbi who is saying Christianity is based on this idea, but he cut it and so that the rabbi says Christianity is totally based. And
this
so
is the
gonna-
historical
we're building
claim
a collection
upon
here.
which Christianity is based. And like you said,
Christianity is based. That's going to be the clip.
Powerful based. Oh wow, Apostate Prophet sending in a $50 super chat. That's powerful.
Welcome.
Powerful based.
Nope.
Oh yeah, someone said that clip goes into AP's soundboard, and we all know it.
Oh yeah, totally.
Sarah
totally.
F. Totally.
One sec.
Did you already get it? What's happening?
I'm getting it right now.
Maybe we should play it one more time.
I'm getting it right here. So
For anyone who is interested, it's around the 59-minute mark, 18 seconds.
this is very important.
this is the historical claim upon which Christianity is based. And like you said,
It just sounds so good. Christianity is based.
Hey,
It's pretty good.
hey, this would actually be funny. That'd be a funny little tweet. Alex O'Connor admits Christianity is based, and that's just a clip. That'll be up later tonight.
Or just a quote. Yeah, just a quote. Christianity is based / Alex O'Connor. All right, let's continue here.
you
What's
say,
the
it's less
timestamp? What's the
accessible.
timestamp on that so I can find it later?
59:18.
All right.
We're running a very serious
59:18.
show.
Yes, this is very serious stuff.
To the scientific method because it's a singular event.
Yeah.
It's not like a process that's still going on today that we can biologically observe. And you can't scientifically or historically prove the resurrection, but you can prove like surrounding facts.
Yep.
You can say that Jesus was crucified, that his disciples claimed to see him, all of this kind of stuff. All of those arguments are still there and still sat in your mind. Presumably you're pretty familiar with them as someone
Yeah.
who specializes in outreach. Why would that change? Like what shifts the
I want to say someone who's seen this in advance, he doesn't really come across as someone who knows what he's talking about. And like he doesn't seem,
He did all this studying and talked to all these apologists.
yeah, it doesn't come across that way,
Okay, we'll see.
but I'll let you guys decide.
the dial on those kinds of arguments for you?
And this is where I don't remember specifically like, okay, well, it was this book, it was it, but
But
it
his
could
hair
be
is
something as simple.
What?
But his hair is beautiful. So
Yeah, that should be his response to everything. Look at my hair. Come on. How could I be wrong?
Look at this
How could
moose
you
that I've got
look
in
at
my
these
hair.
luscious locks?
You think I pay
I could be doing
$200 a month?
shampoo. I could be doing shampoo ads right now, making millions, but I'm not. I'm here exposing the resurrection. How can you disagree with me?
He's got a buttery voice too, you got to admit. Very nice
Yeah.
voice. Very nice hair. The guy just oozes something, masculinity.
It was one aspect of that argument, of that case. Probably the most famous one is, well, why would the disciples die for a lie?
Mhm.
That's the famous argument that that Christian apologists use, right? Why would
I've used that. I've used that. Many times.
That's the only argument I use. I'm just backing up here so we can make sure we get this.
Matter of fact,
You
I
know, it
just
could
did
be
a
something-
I just did like an hour-long video with Sean McDowell on that, since he literally wrote the book on the faiths of the apostles. It was very based.
It's simple. It was one aspect of that argument, of that case. You know, probably the most famous one is, well, why would the disciples die for a lie?
Mm-hmm.
And then when I really looked into that, and then I found that, well, I don't think I can actually historically defend that anyone died for something that they knew to be a lie. Like, I think that this can be explained by them being deceived, right? They could just be wrong about what they saw or their perspective.
You mean
that's his?
I don't understand.
That's his hypothesis. They were deceived.
It would be. So I don't know if he's going to expand upon
hallucination.
that.
No, he doesn't. It's like
that could be hallucination. So
Yeah.
there you
Deceived how?
Oh yeah, that's the question.
By St. Paul and his contemporaries.
So
St. Paul and
he goes
his
on.
contemporaries
He
and their
goes on
contemporaries,
to say.
who was deceived by?
He goes on to say he doesn't know exactly what happened. That's in like the next clip. I just wanted to kind of pause it here. So he doesn't really offer like an explicit, but he does say, well, here's a possibility, and that was like enough to really shake him up.
I grant the possibility. I don't think it's the best explanation. So guys, what we're unclear on is what he means by maybe they were deceived. Because normally if you're saying deceived, it's like someone's deceiving you, someone's tricking you, like someone came up and spread a rumor around and said, hey, you know, this guy rose from the dead and so on, something like that. It would be more common to be kind of misled or deceived by something else, not necessarily deliberate, like hallucinations. So you'd say maybe Peter and Paul and Mary, they had... and I picked Peter, Paul, and Mary specifically because those are the ones that Bart Ehrman grants obviously had some sort of experience that they thought was Jesus appearing to them. So the question would be, I mean, the question for us would be why did different people have the same experience, the same kind of grief hallucination or something like that? But so we don't actually know what he meant, but that's sort of the direction I'm guessing he's going in, because it would be
he
harder
doesn't expand,
to believe. It would be harder to believe that someone came in and just tricked everyone and said, "Hey, did you guys know Jesus rose from the dead?" And they're like, "What? Really? Okay, let's go die for this." Hallucinations. If you did have multiple hallucinations of people thinking they saw Jesus, maybe that could spread around or something like that. It would still be difficult for why you would endure martyrdom, persecution, and martyrdom for something. In other words, let me just because people. Atheists tend to rush through this a little too quickly and don't tend to think carefully enough about it. So my mom and my dad both died. Suppose hypothetically, all of a sudden my mom just walked into the room or something like that. I would be very confused and start wondering who tricked me or something like that, or am I dreaming? All kinds of possible explanations would pop into my head. For that to make some lasting impact of me thinking that she rose from the dead, I would have to be really, really solidly convinced of a number of things. Namely, I would have to be completely convinced that she died and then completely convinced that she was alive again, appearing to me. Suppose I knew conclusively that she died, which I would say I have pretty darn good evidence that she died. But then it was just some vague appearance in a dream or something like that, something like a hallucination. It would kind of be weird later from being persecuted and died, not to think to myself, well, maybe I was just imagining that. Maybe it was kind of hallucinations. In other words, it's hard to account for how that would give me confidence of a resurrection. Guess what? People have dreams and hallucinations about people and so on. Lots of times. I've heard from multiple people said, my grandma died, and then I saw my grandma at the end of the bed, and she said, it'll be okay. And it's like, okay, these people don't conclude someone rose from the dead and appeared to them, they think, oh, at most they think I saw a vision, or even my grandma actually appeared to me, or God allowed grandma to appear to me for a few seconds. That's the sort of thing you conclude from these sort of vague visions or hallucinations or something like that. You don't conclude this person died and physically rose from the dead. To make someone believe that, it seems like it would take something more. And to make an entire group of people think that happened, it seems like it would take something pretty groundbreaking. But I just want to point out, this kind of ties into what we were talking about before, of him thinking that Christians, when Christians believe in the Bible and you point out, hey, did this really happen? And they just go with the Christian perspective and they don't care where the evidence, they don't care about the truth or about evidence. And we pointed out, no, everyone's kind of in this ballpark trying to figure out what makes most sense. But this would be a position where all the evidence that we actually have tells us that Jesus died. All the evidence we have tells us that Jesus' followers were convinced that he had appeared to them, risen from the dead. If you want to just say, no, that I can't believe that, because I think a better explanation would be this or that. But those other explanations don't fit the evidence anywhere nearly as well as Jesus actually appearing risen from the dead. Well, what's he doing here? He's saying, he's doing what he accuses Christians of doing. He's saying, okay, they're not interested in the truth or going where the best explanation is. They just want to defend their own position and say, this is my. So anyway, you're
going to see more of that actually in the next clip. You're going to see more.
Yeah,
of that.
He's not too familiar with the evidence because this doesn't work nearly as well as he thinks. But two, he's doing exactly what he accuses Christians of doing.
That's a really good observation. I also wanted to point out that he's not like the deception hypothesis, them being deceived, like the disciples being deceived. I'm not saying the disciples deceived other people. That'd be the conspiracy hypothesis. But the fact, like his hypothesis that the disciples were deceived doesn't explain the empty tomb. So you've still got to come up with some explanation for why the tomb was found empty. Especially if the disciples were deceived, then someone deceived the disciples about the empty tomb as well. Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. And like, who was this? You got to introduce some other party, some other figure who had some sort of motivation to do this. And you can see like once you start to add on these complex hypotheses, just like if you're trying to explain like who robbed a bank, you're not going to, like, if you can explain everything with one person, you're not going to multiply beyond what you need. This is just straight up Occam's razor. Like you get down to the simplest hypothesis that you need in order to explain the data. You don't go and start to add on different things if you don't need it. And really what it comes down to, and we're going to see this, I think, in the next clip, and this is very well known, that is there's just a naturalistic bias in what is pointing people to these sort of naturalistic hypotheses. Like everything points in the opposite direction. But then just because we've got this naturalistic bias, like I've never seen a miracle, therefore that miracle didn't happen back then. Like that is what is ultimately motivating people. And I think to your point, David, like that is ultimately what, like that's a form of bias. And it's a form of like when you restrict your pool of options, then I mean that's what that's what you're doing is you're restricting the explanations that you're considering. And what that does is it prevents you from possibly entertaining the truth. Like the truth could be one of those options that you're not including in your pool of options. And you got to include all of them. You got to look at all of them. You can't just look at the ones that are comfortable to you or the ones that seem the most reasonable. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. So, that's the exact point I was making, in that we're all in the same boat of once we think, hey, this is where the evidence is pointing, then if something comes along and conflicts with that, then we try to figure out, okay, how do I deal with this in a way that makes sense in light of my worldview? So if you are a Christian and something comes along and say, hey, this doesn't fit well with Christianity, you start saying, okay, well, what can I think about that actually does fit with Christianity and so on? But what's he doing here? It's if you basically conclude that the evidence points towards naturalism, and then someone says, what about this resurrection? You're going to try to come up with some explanation of the evidence that fits with naturalism but guess what? That might not be the best sort of explanation. And then Cameron, what you're talking about is if you granted that, maybe the apostles saw some sort of hallucination or something, and this convinced them that a man had risen from the dead and appeared to them, that would at best explain some level of belief in Jesus' resurrection. It wouldn't explain other things like the empty tomb. So what do you need? You need a combination hypothesis. And even with the appearances, you need a combination hypothesis, because if you say that Peter and let's say Mary had grief hallucinations. Well, what do you do with Paul? Paul's not sad. He wants to exterminate Christianity. Why does he also have hallucinations? They'd be at a different time in a different place for a different guy in a completely different mindset.
Yeah. Then
Why are all these people? Yeah, why are all these people getting these different getting these hallucinations? But even then, that wouldn't account for why there's an empty tomb. So you need a separate explanation for that. So you have to actually start piecing together all these different hypotheses about how to account for all these different pieces of evidence. When going back to Occam's razor, there's one view that accounts for all of the evidence and does it completely with ease.
Yeah.
And so why do you go with the explanation that at best would account for one little bit? And I would say, as I was saying before, I don't think it accounts for belief in the resurrection at all. If you said hallucinations, that would account for some belief that God allowed Jesus to appear to you and to comfort you or something like that. That would account for something like that. It wouldn't account for belief in resurrection, which is a dead person, his body coming back to life. That's what belief in the resurrection. I don't see how a hallucination would do that. So it doesn't fit well, but best case scenario, he needs a bunch of hypotheses that he can't defend, which don't fit the evidence, to somehow account for the evidence. And if you're just doing that because you have an allegiance to naturalism, you're doing exactly what you condemn Christians for doing.
Well, I have one explanation for the for how Paul was possibly had a hallucination, which is that he was walking around and Jesus confronted him and caused him to have a hallucination about it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, Jesus was like, "Hey, I'll make this guy think that he's done." Yeah.
Dawa Troll says he can make a golden shower ad. I think he's talking about the soundboard thing. AP. Thanks, Dawa Troll. All right, Sarah says, articulating David Wood's potency for him. Did you mean that it's as if humanity was already promised, in a sense, at the beginning of time?
Let me put that very differently. Imagine you have a bowl of oatmeal and you're going to say, and that's all that exists. And you say, what could arise from this bowl of oatmeal? Well, it doesn't seem like microchips and things are going to arise from a bowl of oatmeal. Why? It doesn't have the potency. It doesn't have the sort of things you need within it to give rise to microchips or something like that. You need different kinds of things to get that. So what I'm saying is, whatever that singularity is, it somehow contains everything in potency that's needed for everything we see around us. So this isn't some simple thing. It is just loaded with possibility, with things that can be. But then you have to actually get those things. So it has to actually happen. I'm saying I'm amazed just by having the possibility of giving rise to these sorts of things. Again, it's almost like the idea is there for all of these things, and then the idea is actualized. And so my point is that starts sounding more like God than anything that is available to you on naturalism, like the idea of everything, or if you wanted to put it, that like the promise of everything, it's already there. Then it has to be fulfilled. So yeah. Anyway, that was just like a kind of early thought. I'm still not sure exactly how to express it and so on, because I'd want to express it better than I do here. But it's a kind of, as Alex would say, a kind of vibe I got. So thinking about these things is kind of a vibe. It's like, this doesn't seem like mindless. It seems like everything is there, almost in a mind, and then the mind says, "Yeah, let me make all this stuff that is already there in the mind." So.
You should probably think of a better example than oatmeal, because nobody wants to hear about oatmeal.
Everyone loves oatmeal.
It is, yeah. Do you eat oatmeal a lot? Is that why you thought of that?
Tastes like dirt. Tastes like dirt. Chewy dirt.
Okay. Well, there you go. Don't use it. Tastes like dirt. You gotta make your oatmeal better, dude. Just throw some honey in it.
No, that's the point. I load it up. I chop up a banana and I put some berries. Yeah, I do. I load it up. If I have to eat it, yeah.
Yeah.
But generally, I just don't.
All right. Aaron Harlow says, the irony is that the necessary combination of natural events needed for an alternative explanation to the resurrection would itself constitute a miracle.
Exactly. By the way, that is an argument. Habermas brought that up to me one day when he's saying, when we point out, so here's the idea.
I talked to him on the phone for an hour today, by the way.
Oh, well, Lucky you.
It's pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Oh, so here's the idea. An atheist, I think this would be your best response. All you atheists watching out there, I think this would be your best response to the explanation, to the resurrection, apart from being completely clueless about it, which seems to be the normal approach. You don't know what, most atheists don't know what the evidence is, and they think that there's something that arose decades later and stuff, and they don't know that we know this goes back to the original church and the original apostles, which is why the informed skeptics like Bart Ehrman and so on grant, of course, Jesus' death, and then grant at least some appearances. So he doesn't believe Jesus actually appeared, but he believes that the disciples were convinced that Jesus had at least appeared to some of the early believers. But so anyway, the argument would be, because we pointed out, isn't it silly to think that all these hallucinations appeared and then something else happened that gave rise to belief in an empty tomb? And isn't it odd that all these things just happened? It's like, it's too much to believe. So Habermas points out that you could say, well, yeah, it's almost on the level of like a natural miracle. Like, this is so far-fetched, combining all these views. This would go so far against Occam's razor that it's like a natural miracle without divine intervention. It's just a weird coincidence of all these features just coming together that would be on the level of like a miraculous, something miraculous, but it's just natural. And he says an atheist could argue, yes, it's almost on the level of a miracle that all these things happen, that all these people got these hallucinations at not just at the same time, but with these people, and then later with Paul and so on. All these people start hallucinating about the same guys. It's really, 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 really massively, insanely improbable that this would happen. But this is where you can bring kind of Hume's reasoning in. But how's it better to appeal to like a supernatural miracle? So, yeah, I'd rather believe in something that's insanely, ridiculously improbable, a borderline miracle in terms of like how many things have to come together. I'd rather believe in that than believe in a supernatural miracle where God actually intervenes. In other words, how is the supernatural miracle better than something natural, no matter how improbable? So that would be kind of like Hume's reasoning. But Habermas pointed that out.
By the way, we are going to get in a later clip. There is a clip about the Matthew 27:52 through 53 passage about the zombie saints,
the zombies,
the zombies. So we're gonna get to that clip in a little bit. I've got a lot to say about that one. Just wanted to highlight that for you guys. All right, Christian Theologetics says, also, if Christianity began with hallucinations, why didn't any other messianic movement continue on after their leader died? Why didn't they hallucinate and conclude their leader rose? That's a good point. The Christian movement was just unique, dude.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's other people from other groups do have hallucinations and things like that, visions. They don't conclude resurrection because you don't. If something convinces you that someone like physically rose from the dead, there's got to be something there that can. If you just had one person, you could say one person's an idiot and a lunatic who concluded that someone rose from the dead by some sort of hallucination. If a bunch of people are concluding it, it really looks like you need something big, and it doesn't look like these guys have something big that can account for the evidence.
Yes. So really, really good point. Theologetics. Mojabs. Stop. All right. Mojabs says, breaking, AOC agrees with Rabbi. Christianity is based. Alex O'Connor. That's what AOC means. Yeah. Christianity is based. All right. Grays 174. And last of all, he appeared to me in a cave and strangled me, telling me to read even though I was telling him I can't read.
That's Muhammad.
Oh, by the way, that's actually something. That's actually interesting little side point there. So Muhammad, he gets choked and roughed up in a cave, and he actually concludes that it's something demonic, and it's his wife and her cousin that convince him. No, that's an angel, and you're a prophet. You're actually a prophet. But think about this: no one's in there with him, and other people kind of have to explain to him what happened. His impression is that it's something demonic. But if you're dealing with one person having some sort of experience, you can explain that in all kinds of ways. Once you start having multiple people or even groups all experiencing the same thing, then you have more to explain. And I don't think Rhett's explanation works very well.
Old Iron Eyes says 3 of my friends deconverted because of his and Link's original videos. I think people don't realize how influential he is on the younger generation.
Who's Link?
Link is his friend. Link is his friend on Ear Biscuits.
Rhett's friend.
Rhett's. Yep. Rhett. What did I say?
No, you said, I didn't know if you were talking about him or Alex, so I just said Rhett. When you said on the show, I thought, okay, Rhett.
His friend, yeah, Rhett. Yes. So yeah, I mean, yeah, he is influential. I mean, we've been trying to respond to his stuff. Our videos don't get as many views as someone like an Alex O'Connor having Rhett on, but yeah, it is like not very good stuff. It's not very good stuff. I mean, we're sort of coming from the perspective of like the arguments that we've heard, the alternative hypotheses, like the naturalistic alternatives. I have not heard a single good one. A single good alternative hypothesis from a naturalist, including UAP. You never had one.
But if you had a British accent, if you went and got an education in Britain, and sounded a little bit like AOC, maybe you would also get to have a conversation with Rhett.
Oh, true. All right, last one, last super chat before we turn back to get some more clips in. Zonvermeer Skeptic. I don't know how to pronounce that. David Wood, when can we expect the book? Or no. Can we expect a book as a result of the Islamic Dilemma project? God bless you all. Cheers from Croatia.
Yeah, AP brought that up, and then I pointed out that I had already written like half a book on this prior to it, and that part of the reason for the project was to make sure I'm not missing anything. If I want to tell people this is everything the Quran says, I've been through the Quran, but I never actually went through it like verse by verse, making sure I had everything on this topic. So it's kind of part of the reason was to make sure the book is completely 100% correct. But yeah, I suspect you'll see multiple books coming out of this, because I think Jai and DOC definitely need to put one out, because they're the ones going through all the commentaries and stuff like that. But yeah, you'll see tons of stuff on the Islamic Dilemma coming out very, very soon.
All right. So Goat Hub says the best argument against God is oatmeal.
Got a point.
Any thoughts?
That's a good point.
Yeah, very
chewy dirt. If God exists, why would there be oatmeal?
Best argument against the existence of God. All right. I still cannot believe that he made a point during his debate that if you put 2 candles together, you have a bigger flame. I still.
Do you know this?
I think about that way too often.
Never thought of.
The funny thing is, the funniest aspect about that to me is that you would normally expect William Lane Craig to have a more ridiculous reaction to him when he said it, but it seems that William Lane Craig is initially kind of like caught off guard.
He just like
kind of in
caught off guard with stupidity.
That he just
Craig
said that.
Craig would normally be like, "That's just stupid. You don't understand it, right?" Yeah. Hey,
he had his.
Now Hijab would give a different example. He'd be like, imagine if you had 2 mutawives and you put them together, you would have an even bigger mutawife. They would come together like Voltron and you would have this super mutawife.
Oh my gosh, look at this super chat that was just sent in.
Mandatory jizya split this up like mutawife.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
All right, I got
All right.
I got Christianity's based soundbite. I'm going to put it on my soundboard now.
Nice.
All right. So Bellasaria says, "Did Jesus really resurrect, brother? I have doubts."
What doubts, man?
Yes, he did. What doubts? He did. He did for real. For real. We're going to talk more about that. I'm going to give you guys some more evidence here in a little bit that we can talk about, but. Yes, he indeed did. Check out Gary Habermas. I mentioned him a little bit earlier. We're going to talk about him in an upcoming clip. But if you don't know anything about this whole thing, check out Gary Habermas's work on the resurrection. William Lane Craig, we were just talking about him as well. check out his work. He's got a really good, a lot of lectures on YouTube on the resurrection, the evidence for the resurrection. I would highly recommend you go check out those. If you want a book, like a short book that's going to convince you that there's actually a whole lot to the argument for the resurrection, The Sun Rises. That is probably one of the top books that I would recommend
classic
to you guys.
Classic,
very small,
short
very thin.
Short
Yes.
book.
But it's
also,
packed. Like every page has like 6 arguments on it. It's really good.
But just bringing up Habermas, he's making a similar point that we were talking about earlier, that whatever explanation you're putting forward, it needs to explain all the evidence. And so his approach, going back to his, I think in his original doctoral dissertation, he listed 10 facts, and he said these are the facts that are agreed upon generally by scholars across the board. And therefore, if you want to explain the resurrection, your theory has to account for all these things. And then he would go through and show, okay, well, the resurrection accounts for all these things. All your other theories, at best, they account for this little part or this little part. And so you need combination theories, and it's becoming wildly improbable that this would actually be the explanation for all this evidence and so on. Then later he expanded it to 12 facts. And so he's taking facts that you can actually defend and that scholars believe, whether they're Christians or atheists or whatever, and saying, okay, if you want a good explanation for the evidence, it has to account for these things. And guess what? Your alternative theories, they just don't. They don't account for these things. So it's similar to what we were saying earlier.
Mm-hmm. Very standard way of reasoning. Very, very good stuff. Very respectable. All right, let's continue this clip here. Very based. So Rhett explains that he doesn't know exactly what happened at the resurrection, but there's some explanation for how it started, but it's not that he was raised from the dead. That's what he claims in the next clip.
Based.
But I think the bigger picture was, as I started looking at different perspectives on the historical Jesus, I remember there was one book that was called The Historical Jesus, 5 Views. And I read that book, and I think every one of them was some kind of Christian.
Yeah,
just
sure.
Different gradations of liberal or progressive Christian. And everyone laid out their case with a lot of confidence and a lot more scholarship and knowledge than I have about the subject. But it was so gray. And I just started, this feeling began to creep in, which was like, okay, well, maybe he did rise from the dead, but what I've learned about the process of historical investigation, and also just the nature of human psychology and the nature of religious movements and the nature of people's willingness to believe things, like, it began to dawn on me that I don't know exactly what happened with Jesus. I don't know the nature of specifically the nature of his death. Like, was he left on the cross? Was he thrown into a large, like mass grave? Was he put into a rich man's grave by Joseph of Arimathea? Was that invented? I don't know.
He doesn't know.
Well,
but what seems to be pretty clear to me is that it's almost certain that there's some explanation for how it all started that isn't that he actually raised from the dead.
That was terrible. That was terrible. He just said almost certain. Now, here's the thing: if you're saying, "Hey, there are all these hypotheses, there are all these different positions out there. Who knows what happened?" Okay, give us one that actually accounts for the evidence well. Just give us one. If you're saying, "Hey, there are all these," so I don't know exactly what happened because there's just so many different things that could happen right there. Give us one that actually accounts for the evidence that we have.
You can't do it. You're weak.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that he offered as a possible response is full of holes. It's like massively full of holes, and it doesn't look like it would ever account for belief in Jesus' resurrection at all. Like it wouldn't do it. So, I don't know. The only way he could say what he just said is if he's saying it's almost certain that naturalism is true. And since it's almost certain that since it's almost certain that naturalism is true, it's almost certain that Jesus didn't rise from the dead. There must be some other explanation.
here's the question you have to ask. What is the evidence for naturalism? What is what is all of this overwhelming evidence that you have that naturalism is true? You have evidence that there are natural laws. Sure. Where did those come from? Why did those exist in the first place? What is your evidence that naturalism, that only natural things exist? I hate that term in the first place. Natural. I think the natural supernatural distinction needs to go away. But what is your evidence that there is no God that is holding all of this together, that created everything? What is your evidence for that? I don't know. I don't know. I don't understand anymore.
Yeah,
I used to think that it was the problem of evil, that it was like this is the big reason that people give to think that atheism is true. I made a video a little while back on explaining why I don't take atheism seriously. And it was because of this realization that I had about the problem of evil, that even if you grant everything that the atheist wants with the problem of evil, it does not rule out theism, because you could just literally adopt a different form of theism where God is almost exactly the same, but just a little bit limited in power. And like you still have a full-blown theism, and the problem of evil is no more. And that might be like a weird different view of theism, but you don't land on atheism as a result of this argument. You land on a different form of theism. Like, that's literally all that happens. That's the worst case scenario. It doesn't mean, like, because you still have to account for everything else. You still have to account for fine tuning. You have to account for moral knowledge and why anything contingent exists and all these different things. You still got to account for those somehow if you're an atheist. So just saying, oh, we've got this problem of evil doesn't do what needs to happen.
Yeah.
So again, my question is, what is all of this? What is supporting this claim that, oh, naturalism is true, dude? Like, look at all these natural laws. I haven't even talked about miracles. I'm going to talk about miracles a little bit later in the stream and stuff, but
Miracles.
Yeah. To put what you just said a little differently. So guys, keep in mind, if you say the God that Christians believe in, I've got evidence against that or something like that, you're a million miles away from naturalism, right? Because there would be all kinds of different concepts. Naturalism claims that the natural world is all that exists. So you're just ruling out anything supernatural.
Gods.
Yeah. So you could grant the problem of evil disproves the Christian concept of God. How in the world does that get you to the claim that there's nothing but the natural worlds? You're borderline stupid if you reason like that.
Well, let me point out really quickly that the Bible does not actually say that God is omnipotent. Okay, so that's actually an inference that we make based on certain scriptures and stuff. But you could say that there are ways to interpret those that don't necessarily. So
you could.
It is possible to be a consistent
Christian.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could be a Christian and even have a modified view of God.
Which I don't think you need to do. Like, I think there are really good responses to the problem of evil. My point was to say that even if you grant the problem of evil, it doesn't do what the atheist needs.
Yeah, it doesn't get you anywhere near naturalism and wouldn't even refute Christianity. No. So if you're taking just naturalism as almost certain, and we're sitting here going, well, what's your evidence for it? Cameron's just pointing out, like, as an example, well, you might say the problem of evil or something like that. Okay, that doesn't get you to natural. Why? What is the evidence for naturalism? Because we're just seeing things differently. Like, even when I'm looking at these two guys having a discussion, or if they were talking about the problem of evil, just once you see it, it's hard to unsee that. I'd be sitting here thinking, okay, these guys are arguing that all the evidence points to naturalism, something like that, or at least this guy. I'm thinking, what do you need for these two guys to even be having a discussion, let alone anything else that's going on? For these two guys to be having this discussion about naturalism or about Christianity or about anything, what do you need? As Cameron's point, you need a universe. You need the existence of a universe. Okay, that's the basis for the cosmological argument for the existence of God. You can't just have any kind of universe. It needs to be one that can support life. So you need a finely tuned universe. That's the basis of the argument from fine tuning for the existence from God. Then you actually need life. So that's the basis for a design argument based on life and DNA and things like that. But you could have life and still not have this discussion taking place. What do you need? You need human consciousness. You need beings with human consciousness. Okay, so that's an argument based on human consciousness for a creator. And you need all these other things. You need laws of logic. If you're making arguments, you need laws of logic if you're saying that God wouldn't allow this or that, you're making a kind of moral argument. You're assuming you understand objective moral values that not only do you believe in them, a creator would also. So you're talking about things that aren't just helping you survive and reproduce. These are moral values that even an omnipotent creator would have to follow, which means you think they're objective for all rational beings. How do you, as something that's not terribly different from other animals and so on, how do you have access to these things which shouldn't even exist on your worldview? Where is this thing? Where is this objective moral value that you're applying to God? And then even at the end of all of that, you still need reliable cognitive faculties that assure you that you can actually get to the truth about these matters. What were your cognitive faculties made by? According to you, Rhett and Alex, where did your cognitive faculties, your reasoning ability, where did this come from? It developed to help you find food and find a mate. That's how you got your abilities, according to evolution. You arrived at your cognitive faculties because they helped you find food and a mate and defend yourself against enemies by making a weapon or something like that. Okay, is that the sort of ability? If I said, hey, you got the ability to survive and reproduce and to think about things a little bit, would you trust that sort of ability to get you to the truth about naturalism or theism or what happened
really
here
big
2,000 years ago?
Metaphysical ideas.
You wouldn't think that. You wouldn't think. And if you're thinking, oh, of course we can do this. We're smart. You're not getting it. Guess what? The same process, the exact same process that gave you your reasoning ability, according to evolutionary theory, the same process that gave you your reasoning ability gave a rat its ability to think. Right. And guess what? It can learn certain things. It can learn, oh, my buddy got stuck to that glue trap. Maybe I stay away from glue traps. Right. It can learn things like that help it what? Survive and reproduce. That's the only game in town for how you got your cognitive faculties. They helped you survive and reproduce. Okay, so here are abilities that helped my ancestors survive and reproduce, and they were able to reproduce until you eventually got to me, and so I inherited their abilities that helped them survive and reproduce. How in the name of common sense do you say, here's this ability that's the same ability that a rat has, mine's just more developed. How do you get from here's an ability that I can trust to tell me about the origin of the universe and ultimate reality and realities that are beyond this universe? How do you trust that sort of thing? You can't. And so I look at something like this and I say, everything you guys are talking about, this entire conversation, this entire video, everything points to something diametrically opposed to what you're claiming. And it's just weird. It's like saying, hey, here's everything that's needed for this discussion to take place. It all points away from what we're claiming, but we're taking what we're claiming as almost certain.
Oh, yeah, that was good. Yeah, and this is like, if you study this argument, the argument for the resurrection in any depth, you're going to start to see like what is the basis? Why do skeptics see, like, why are they so confident in their skepticism about the resurrection? Because you start to hear like the alternatives that they propose, like the hallucination hypothesis is like, to use a term that Rhett uses a little bit later on, it is bonkers. It is absolutely bonkers, the hallucination hypothesis, because this has been pointed out a number of times, but group hallucinations simply don't occur. They don't occur because a hallucination is something that happens privately in your brain. It's like a dream. Like Mike Lacona has a really good analogy. Like if you were laying down one night and you had a dream, like you don't wake up your wife next to you and say, hey, join me in my dream, right? It's because this is a private thing happening in your brain. And so group hallucinations, like if it was happening to the group of all the disciples all at one time, or the 500 all at one time, like this doesn't happen. You don't have these hallucinations. Like it is a bonkers hypothesis. And yet skeptics feel so confident in forwarding it because they have to say something. They have to have some explanation for how Christianity started, but they're coming from this starting point of naturalism has to be true. And then we're questioning, why are you there in the first place? Why are you at the position that you're almost certain that naturalism is true? What is the basis for that view? Is it the problem of evil? Because it can't be that. Because as we've already pointed out, that doesn't get you to naturalism. So then what is it? Why do you think that no God exists, or that miracles are impossible, or that miracles are super improbable? And again, I haven't even talked about miracles. That's one thing you didn't mention in your list of evidence is miracles. Like, there are contemporary miracles that have to be accounted for as well. That atheists, like, once you start to talk about miracles, that's when atheists, I think, get really uncomfortable. AP, I don't know if you ever had any experience with that, but because like a lot of them just aren't familiar with like these sort of cases and stuff, just because there's so many. There are so many miracles that get reported across the world. Like, it is insane, and most people have never heard of these. And so if you just like start to give like even just the most basic facts of any one of them, like, whoa, what are you talking about? Like right now, for example, just to give you a taste, I am investigating a miracle account. I haven't mentioned this anywhere because I'm still investigating. I'm trying to get medical documentation to back it up, but I've heard from 2 credible witnesses so far. This guy got a spider bite on his hand, and he let it rot. Like, he basically let it go for like a week, and his arm all the way up, very, very smart on his part. But after about a week, it was I forget exactly what spider bit him, but it was obviously very poisonous, and it like his arm was necrosed all the way up to like the middle of his bicep, and they were about to amputate it. Okay. A priest came and prayed for him, and the next day he wakes up and his arm is fine. And there's 2 people that have that as I say are witnesses to this. One of them was the priest himself, and this person I've talked to, he was there, saw the arm, saw the next day that his arm was fine, and that is impossible. Your arm does not come back from the dead. Like, it just naturally, it doesn't happen, because if the arm is necrosed and they're about to amputate it, it's gone. You're done. Like, your arm needs to come off. It's like if you have frostbite, your fingers don't just, if you have necrosed flesh, it doesn't just come back. It's dead. It's gone. And that's what happened to this guy. And this is the tip of the iceberg.
Hey, Cameron. Oh, yeah. So
Yes.
along the lines of what you're pointing out, there was that Pew study years ago that went to one denomination in 10 countries to poll people on how many people believe they've actually witnessed a miracle. And one denomination in 10 countries, they were already in the hundreds of millions. There were around 200 million people who believed that they had witnessed a miracle. And so if you kind of expanded on that and you said, okay, what if it's not just those 10 countries? What would you think? It seems like you'd probably be around 1 billion people if you went like globally or something like that. But you're already in the hundreds of millions just based on 10 countries and so on. So
And
anyway,
if any one of those is true.
That's the point. You have so as a Christian, you're free to say, "Hey, I believe that most of those are just people imagining them," or "I don't know on most of those," or something like that. Or it could be some sort of mixture. If you're a committed naturalist, you have to assume, in spite of the evidence, you have to just assume everyone's wrong. And then if you were to listen to anyone's evidence, then you would this person is almost certainly wrong already, as you're being unbiased and objective in your investigations. That's one kind of thing. But I wanted to point it out, because this is a couple of years ago, I was talking to John McRae, and we were talking about miracles or something. I said, we should do a video series called Miracle Hunters, right? We'll get a van and we'll make it the Miracle Hunters, Miracle Hunters. And we get a van and we make it the Miracle Mobile, right? Like Scooby-Doo, the Mystery Machine, but we'll have the Miracle Machine. The Miracle Machine.
I can see why this didn't pan out.
No, it's a brilliant idea. This would be classic, right? We actually, so the series is called Miracle Hunters, but we're in the Miracle Mobile, and we actually drive around to investigate these miracle accounts and stuff like that, and then we record it, and it's like the Ghost Hunters type thing, but with miracles.
Dude,
drive around.
That would get dozens of views.
Everyone would ask everyone in the chat. Would you watch a show called Miracle Hunters, where people drive around in a van and then go investigate?
AP, would you watch that?
You're saying this. We want to talk to the doctor. Everyone would watch this, and show us your evidence. Show us the picture of that. Show us the picture.
It'd be good.
That'd be dope.
Yeah, but dude, I don't understand. Sorry, I was kind of away from the microphone. I don't understand. What is motivating this ridiculous level of skepticism about miracles? I don't get it. It obviously is this naturalistic bias. And I think a lot of people are in the position like, well, I've never seen someone like float in the air. I've never seen this happen. I don't have any experience with that. Therefore, it's just super unlikely that it happened. And I think that's probably
it's-
where they're coming from.
It's mostly a Western thing. If you go to the other parts of the world, they don't have that. Like, what are you talking about? Miracles happen all the time.
Right.
Have you, Cameron? Have you looked into the? I know since you engage with Catholic stuff over the last years. Have you looked into the miracles that are in France in Lourdes?
That's all Cameron does. Where have you been?
Have you been,
That's why Cameron spends half his time doing that, and you're like, have you ever done this?
have you been extensively documenting on those?
I haven't done Lords yet. I'm that's
See?
on my list. It's on my list.
He's ignorant.
He hasn't done it yet.
No, I was
So
going to
I
mention
heard
someone
him.
else, and I'll mention him. I'll mention him in a little bit, but no, that there's literally so many miracles to investigate. It's mind blowing. It's mind.
I want to also say very briefly something about the whole resurrection explanation, the whole mass hallucination thing that you just brought up. It was always confusing to me when I watched a bit of the debate between Bart Ehrman and Mike Licona, and also I was there promoting it, the debate. And Bart Ehrman very much agrees that multiple people undeniably believed that Jesus was resurrected from the dead, but he doesn't explain it as an actual supernatural thing. He tries to explain it as something natural, or as hallucination, or whatever it is. But you just brought up something interesting, a good point, which is I didn't understand for a while what people meant when they tried to explain that it might be group hallucination or mass hallucination. The thing is, there is an acknowledged thing called, mass hallucination or group hallucination, but it doesn't really mean what people generally think it means when they try to suggest that the resurrection occurrence or the resurrection witnessing might have been a mass hallucination. It's not that multiple people can come together or independently from each other observe something very elaborate and supernatural actually taking place, like Jesus being killed and then rising with a perfect transformed body and coming and speaking to them and interacting with them and so on, and them spending extensive time with each other and so on. So stuff like this, it doesn't just happen. This is not what mass hallucination is. What mass hallucination would be that people experience something vague, something appearing to them in some.
But it would still have to be objective,
and they would suggest to each other that something extraordinary took place, and by mutual accounts or by some common hysteria or some common emotions, then lead to a certain conclusion. So this is what is generally described as a mass hallucination. A mass hallucination or a group hallucination where people actually experience very credible, very elaborate hallucinations like Jesus rising from the dead. Such a thing does not happen. So the whole mass hallucination explanation for the resurrection is a very poor one, in my opinion. That said, I'm not sure. I haven't so far ever looked at the whole resurrection argument. I know David loves the resurrection argument and said, this is the proof. I've also not engaged with the other side and considered, this is the proof. That is not true. But the mass hallucination argument is a very, very poor one. And people, I think, need to understand that.
Yeah, but it's also like the best one that they've got.
Yeah, that is. And so the idea is it's called causal adequacy, right? Whatever your explanation is, whatever the cause is of the evidence, it needs to be adequate to account for the evidence. And if it isn't, then you kind of got a crap explanation. And so when you say, oh yeah, a bunch of hallucinations, it's not adequate. As it's not adequate to account for even the belief that you're talking about, and it doesn't account for other things, which is why you need to explain the evidence that's available to us. You need multiple causally inadequate explanations. And why would you take those instead of one actually causally adequate explanation, one that accounts for all the evidence?
Mm-hmm. Investment Joy says Christ is Lord. Christ indeed is Lord. AP, say it. Say it. Get some Patreon subscribers.
Christ is Lord.
And if this gets 1,000 likes, AP will say it again.
If this gets 1,000 likes, then I will make a video saying Christ is Lord.
I will pray the rosary.
Depending what denomination you are. Specify with your donation what kind of Christian you are, and I will do something that you like.
2 Muslims in a mubahala. What is this? Makes one
Mubahala.
big mubahala. Makes one big zabiba.
That's funny.
What is that?
It's a curse duel.
Two people.
I'm sure you remember Ali Dawa challenging me back in the day, and then sitting down and
That's great.
bro. Let's do Mubahala. If you
having a debate with me, but before the debate, challenging me to invoke the curse of Allah. So this is an Islamic concept, an Islamic practice, where if two sides are making opposing claims, and it seems that and one side suspects or accuses the other side of lying, then you challenge them to a mubahala, where they both stand, they go outside on high noon with some Western thriller music, and then out in the field, like cowboys, stand there and say to each other, if I am indeed lying, then may Allah's curse descend upon me. And the other side also says that, and if I am lying, then may Allah's curse descend upon me. And then whoever gets, if they say it, then they're supposed to believe
Whoever
each
gets
other.
cursed.
Yeah, and unless somebody gets cursed, then it proves that they are lying. And the curse is very vague. It could happen within a lifetime. So.
Yeah. So,
Oh, wow.
and then, so basically what happens is, 15 years later, they'll say, oh, you see, you got COVID. This is the proof that Allah cursed you, and so on. So normally you'd want to put some restrictions on it. You'd have to say, okay, within a year, this would happen or something like that. But yeah, Ali Dawa challenged him to Mubahala, and he accepted. And then Ali Dawa went, it's not making any sense. You don't even believe in God, isn't it? So that didn't work out very well. But yeah, Muslims have been challenging each other to mubahalas like left and right. And then a zabiba, I don't know if you know what that is. That's the mark on the foreheads of Muslims who they'll like bang they'll deliberately like bump their heads on the floor to give themselves like a permanent mark on their foreheads.
And
it's like,
you see how
holy I am,
you pray, you see.
Believe me, because I have the biggest zabiba.
Okay.
What do you
still
think
don't really get the comment.
What do you think Jesus would say about guys banging their heads on the floor to show how holy and righteous they are?
I have the biggest zabiba.
This proves that I'm holier than you.
All right, let's move on. Sarah says, you guys have thoroughly ruined me. Last week's conference with Ambassador Somio said they had doubts. Me sitting in front row and had to restrain myself physically.
Oh.
You were supposed to say, what doubts, man? Yeah.
She sent another one. She said, problem of evil is not an argument against God. It's permission for atheists to remain defiantly disobedient and not have to wrestle with the thought of God daily.
Powerful.
Beast.
All right. Algegundis says the naturalistic explanations of the resurrection don't account for the ascension. Can hallucinations just stop? Can a survivor of a crucifixion fly? Yeah, I think that's not really the argument, though. The argument that someone like a Gary Habermas is going to give is solely going to be about the resurrection, just because the evidence for that is a little bit better documented. The facts that are required.
You have stronger evidence. Yeah, you have stronger evidence and earlier evidence for belief in Jesus' resurrection than you have for his ascension. So keep in mind, I believe in the ascension. I believe in all kinds of things that belief in the resurrection in particular, you can trace back to within the first 2 years. So this is not something that developed years later, something like that. Where you could say belief in the ascension came about later, or was invented. But certain beliefs we can trace back to the very beginning, and therefore you can't appeal to legend or to fabrication or something like that. You have to say, how did these early people conclude this? And you have to have an explanation that accounts for it.
Yeah. For example, in 1 Corinthians 15, it does not mention the ascension. And so that's the really early evidence, some of the really early evidence that we're talking about. when it comes to, because there's a creed that's mentioned there, and the creed goes back, some date it to within months of the resurrection event itself. So, yeah. All right, let's move on. I hear some noise from AP. What's going on with that?
My mic.
Your microphone is like changing to something else.
What are you doing your mic, man?
Wah, 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 wah. Is
Yeah,
it fixed
Okay, there
now?
you go.
Yeah, it's
it's
fixed.
fixed.
Yeah.
He's a professional,
Stop doing
ladies and
that.
gentlemen. He does one thing in life. He
Stop it.
does live streams, and can't even get that right.
Hi, I was wondering about this refutation of the ID. Apparently, that it changed again. Apparently, the Surah grants the Quran as a supreme authority over it. How does this work?
Yeah, we're not going to talk about that now. No, the Quran nowhere claims to be a supreme authority. You're talking about Surah 5, verse 48, and it's a total mistranslation that's made specifically to respond to the Islamic dilemma. In other words, you go to all the commentaries from all the centuries. You don't get the Quran is the supreme authority. The Arabic word is muhaimin, which means guardian. But they'll say, oh, we'll translate it by magic as supreme authority over. And so that's one problem. It has never meant that until modern Muslims decided they needed to respond to the Islamic dilemma. So that's one problem. The other problem is there were early Muslims, because of what the verse actually says. It names Muhammad and the Quran, and then it says that one is a muhaimin over something else, right? Most Muslims think that this is referring to the Quran. The Quran is the muhaimin, it's the guardian. And if so, what's it guarding? It's guarding the previous scriptures, which, by the way, we use that to support our case. The Quran claims that it's guarding the previous scriptures, not that it's changing them or calling them corrupt or something like that. So we use that. But they try to creatively just mistranslate the word as supreme authority so that Muslims read their English Qurans like, oh, it's the supreme authority thing. The earlier scriptures are corrupt. The reason that falls apart and they've just committed shirk and are not even Muslims anymore is that you did have early Muslims who thought that the muhaimin is not the Quran over the previous scriptures. The muhaimin is Muhammad over the Quran. Why is this relevant? Well, if Muslims today are saying that muhaimin means supreme authority over and gets to correct the errors in, that's what it means. Okay, you had early Muslims who believed that Muhammad is the muhaimin over the Quran. So if that's what muhaimin means, it means supreme authority over who gets to correct errors, then that would make Muhammad the supreme authority over the Quran in early Muslim belief. And so Muhammad would be the authority over Allah and his word. And if a Muslim says that Muhammad is the supreme authority over Allah's speech, he is so far outside of Islam that, I mean, according to the Quran, he's going to hell. He's going to hell.
You're going
And
to hell,
so, yeah. That doesn't work, but yeah, you could check out. I made a video about this if you want the actual sources, and I'll give you the commentary and so on. It's one of my recent videos from maybe a couple weeks ago, and it's called this one. Oh, no. It's my response to Muhammad Hijab. Look up Muhammad Hijab embarrasses himself with the Islamic dilemma or something like that. Look that up. That's a couple weeks ago.
All right, just a few more super chats. We'll dive back into just probably our last clip for the evening. Xavier Roberts says, how do you deal with an atheist that constantly say the burden of proof is always on theists, on us to prove, not them? So what I would say is you don't deal with them, you pray for them.
Yeah, I would say I would ask a question. I would say, do you believe that you have some explanation? Do you believe that you actually have a correct understanding of the world? Okay, show me that your understanding of the world is correct. Because what you're saying right now, atheist, if you're saying I have no defense of my position, I don't have a position, I don't have anything that can defend, I have no evidence for my position. Okay, I believe I have evidence, and you're saying you can't possibly give any evidence for your position. Okay, great. Then I think I have good evidence, and I think you have, and you acknowledge that you have nothing that you can present. You have nothing to offer in the realm of evidence. And you're so ashamed by your inability to present any evidence that you just want to define your position out of the realm of something that can be rationally defended. Great. So why would I even take you seriously?
Well, that's my point, is that someone who espouses this view is not someone that you should be taking seriously intellectually. You should take them seriously as a person whom God loves, but you shouldn't be taking them seriously as someone that you really need to spend time on and try to intellectually engage them. That's my view after many years of doing this. I used to engage people like that all the time, and it turned out to be a complete waste of my time. So I recommend, I think, is it J. Warner Wallace has a good, I can't remember like how he puts this, but there's a sort of spectrum where you can put people, where people who are just really closed to the evidence, like you don't really want to spend a whole lot of time talking with them because it's not going to get anywhere, and they're so entrenched in their views that it's almost pointless to try to do apologetics with these people. And so what you should do instead is just like, be very loving to them, pray for them, those sorts of things, but don't really get into these really long-winded debates because it's not going to be very fruitful if they're really closed off. And you can, I think, tell some people are very open, a lot of people are not. And so you've got to make that discernment, but that would be my recommendation. Just so that no one is wasting all their time. But all right, let's see. Yeah, just a couple more super chats. Fox McCloud, Miracle Hunters is mega base.
See? People are telling you, man. We got the Miracle Mobile. Go around, track down some of these stories, look for the evidence, get some recordings, put cameras in people's faces, say, tell us what happened. Then we'll go to some other witness and say, tell us what happened. We'll see how they line up. Then we'll say, tell us which doctor examined you and found this. Then we'll go and interview the doctor. And then we'll vote. We'll vote on whether we think a miracle has occurred. Classic.
Sounds like a Black Mirror episode. Change comes from within. How do people dismiss prayer but use Wi-Fi and calls? I'm not really sure what the point here is.
The idea is thinking prayer is silly, but then thinking, but I can sit here and get on my cell phone and talk to someone around the world, but there's no way God could actually be hearing my prayers. Something like that, I think.
Good Godfather says, rarely these guys care about facts. Usually it's because they want to bend the knee to alphabet cult. Alphabet cult, I guess, is just
that's LGBTQ.
Atheism? Oh,
no, that's LGBTQ stuff. Yeah.
I see. Goat Hub. Wait a minute. This is a Protestant Catholic Orthodox stream. We healing the schism, baby.
I didn't even notice that. You see?
That's good. That's good stuff.
You see. That's
all right.
good.
One. Yeah.
See, it can happen, ladies and gentlemen. It can happen. Now, which one's the Pope? Which one's the Pope among us?
Well,
Cameron.
I think the answer to that is obvious.
Okay. Cameron's the Pope because he's the Catholic.
Yeah. I'm the only one that's available. All right, Steve Sinead says Swaminarian miracles are very well documented. Swaminarian, I don't know what that word is. Some sort of miracles are very well documented. Nice. All right, let's move back to some more clips, and then we'll take some more super chats. All right, so this one I think will be probably our last clip from the Rhett McLaughlin video. And this one there's two more clips to get to. This one mentions Gary Habermas, and let's play the rest of this clip. It's only about a minute long, and then we'll play one more clip.
In my compulsion to believe that he raised from the dead, it is a religious position. It is a faith position. It's not an historically defensible position to the degree that these Christian apologists make it out to be. We were talking.
Do you agree with that?
Play that again. That was short. So faith position. Just want to be clear on what he said.
That isn't that he actually raised from the dead. In my compulsion to believe that he raised from the dead, it is a religious position. It is a faith position. It's not an historically defensible position to the degree that these Christian apologists make it out to be. We were talking last night about Dale Allison, how I just think I love his book.
He's great.
And this was all like, I read that like 2 years ago. So this is all way after my deconstruction, but I'm still interested in the subject.
This is all
but,
still related.
He's a Christian. He believes that it happened. But I think he's got one of the best books on the resurrection. The thing is so refreshing about it is he's not coming at this from like a Gary Habermas standpoint where he's like, this is the most reasonable thing. And if you don't agree with that, you're being unreasonable. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, no, we're talking about the pinnacle of an unreasonable idea, an unreasonable
yeah.
event. This is not, if this happened, this is something I have to accept on faith, and I am completely fine with people who do that. But my intuition is that it didn't happen, and I have sort of lost my ability to have faith in things that are just conjecture and things that something that foundational.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I still have what I would call some level of.
Anyways, AP is gone.
Finally.
There he is. You're back. Can you hear
Continue.
us? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I think that's
what-
I think that's terrible.
I think so too. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Terrible.
guys, you're saying belief in the resurrection is just that's just faith. That's just faith.
He also says it's unreasonable.
Yeah, there's that too. And so why would it be unreasonable? Well, if you're just presupposing naturalism, then it would be unreasonable. But then what we're sitting here going, what's your evidence that naturalism is true? I'm not aware of any. So that would be what? That would be faith. That would be a faith position, right? If you're sitting here, and I don't mean in the sense of like I have
One
faith
might
in
even say
Jesus because of what I know about him. This is just I have no evidence for this, and I'm just going to have faith that this is the position. I'm going to use it to rule out or declare unreasonable positions that don't seem like naturalistic. But if you have the evidence, right? You have certain facts. So you have really, really good evidence that Jesus died. You have really, really good evidence that his followers were claiming that he had appeared to them. You have really, really good evidence that they believed this. And so then you look for an explanation that accounts for these things and that explains these things. Now, what you could say is, I'm just going to call any explanation faith because I think that it accounts for these things or something like that. Well, following that, then this guy has massive amounts of faith because earlier he was saying, well, I believe that there's some other explanation. Okay, well, that's faith then. You have faith that some other explanation accounts for these things as you're using the word faith. So if you want to use faith for that, then great. You are loaded with faith. You have all kinds of faith. You have faith about all kinds of things. So don't say, oh, these Christians, they just have faith. But what do we have faith in? We have faith that we have all this evidence, and the best explanation, the one that accounts for all the evidence, just happens to be a supernatural explanation that involves a resurrection. And so if you're going to call that faith, fine, then call everything you believe about everything else faith as well.
And we also have personal experience. Like, I don't know about you guys, but I have religious experiences that I think can be added to the list of evidence. AP, have you had any religious experiences now that you're Christian?
Aside from being on this channel,
do you have any experiences at the Eucharist or like when you guys do mass or not, it's not mass, right? It's liturgy.
Liturgy, yeah, divine liturgy.
Divine
I'm
liturgy.
kind of reserving much of stuff to myself at this moment, at this stage, because I don't know. I feel like even if I explain why, I feel like it would sound inadequate as an explanation to why. But I feel like at this stage, at this point, I am very, very reserved in terms of explaining why I believe certain things, how it, the experiences that attest to or that make me believe in it and so on. At this stage, I kind of want to keep things very, very minimal and only later on talk about it.
Gotcha.
That's what I do.
Okay. Fair enough. Yeah. I don't really have anything to add beyond what you said, David.
Oh, I can say AP has had strange religious experiences. I saw him. We're outside the Wailing Wall, and he's like, "I'm no longer an atheist. I am now an agnostic."
I have to say, I wasn't really thinking about those, but if you want to take those into consideration, I actually just recently had a long conversation with a person of great faith and brought those things up. but the whole Israel trip was extraordinary, and I think it did change me from a hardcore ice cold atheist to an agnostic, to the point of where I think there was in fact a funny thing where we were on the flight back. I don't know. I feel like I remember this as the flight back, where I started talking to you about it. I'm not sure if it was on the flight back,
Yeah.
if it was at the
There was
airport.
an Orthodox Jewish guy in between us, and then he got up and walked away because I think he thought I was some sort of like anti-Israel guy because I was bringing up I was editing a video I was editing a video. He didn't speak any English. I was editing a video, but I'm pulling up all these pictures of all the protests and stuff like that because I'm using them in a video, and so I'm pulling up all these protests against Israel and stuff like that, pictures, and I can see him kind of. So anyway, he eventually gets up, and then we started talking. But yeah, that was on the plane. We were talking. That guy got up.
Yeah. I think that's when we were talking. That's when I started telling you that that things seem very strange to me after this trip, and that I feel more and more like I can't really explain the world, and I can't really make sense of a lot of sentiments that people have. The sentiments that people have toward Israel, toward Jewish people, and all that, and that. I kind of struggle to feel. I struggle to think that there are completely reasonable, natural, logical explanations to how people feel about Israel, how people feel about Jews, how people feel about God, and so on, and how visiting the wall and certain experiences and encounters that I had there with people as well that I brought up before have been very, very, very profound and have impacted me in a very huge way, I have to say, on my journey to just go away from pure, strict, dogmatic atheism and more toward a path of seeking and trying to find out what isn't true. And it took a very long time, actually. Thinking back, we went to Israel that was January 2024, right? So it was a long time ago. And between then and now, I've only begun going to church and officially wanting to become part of the faith and of the church only a month or two ago. A lot of time has passed where I have tried to let it sink in and contemplate on things. But yeah, I still feel like I'm not ready to talk about everything. I still feel like I'm keeping so much of it, so much of my experiences
I know exactly
and
what you're talking about.
my feelings. I keep so much of it to myself, and it's kind of funny. As somebody who is online and who is in the sphere of influencers, maybe I should be taking advantage of the situation and just blogging about it and vlogging about it and talking about it every day. But I feel like I don't want to do that. I have spent like over 90% of everything that's going through my head and happening just to myself in private, just talking to very few people about it, and only expressing very, very little of all of this online.
Good for you.
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Yeah, good stuff.
You need to take Lily J's course on how to milk the community.
How to monetize faith.
All right, let's watch one more clip, and then we'll get to some more super chats. All right, so in this one, Alex gives the zombie saints argument. All right, this one is about a minute long.
Mythical storytelling becomes really difficult. Dale Allison talks at length about the raising of the graves in Matthew's gospel at the time of Jesus'
which
death.
is bonkers.
There's the bonkers line. Yeah, he says it's bonkers. Again, so this is Matthew 27, 52 through 53. They're going to talk about it a little bit, but I'll pull it up here.
Absolutely bonkers. But it's really strange how it's worded as well, because it says that when Jesus dies, it says at that moment when he dies, there's a great earthquake and all the graves open, and the holy ones of Jerusalem appear to people after the resurrection. And it's a really weird, clunky wording, because it says that the graves opened when Jesus died, but then it said that the people appeared to many after the resurrection, as if like they were just laying dead in the open tomb for 3 days or something. Like it's weirdly worded. And you've got this, and Matthew's the only one who reports it, and you've got this undertone of Jesus being the firstborn of the dead. And it's like, okay, like Dale Allison is pretty convinced this didn't actually happen. It's another question whether Matthew thought it happened.
Right.
But the problem is that if Matthew didn't, if, okay, well, this is just a bit of myth that Matthew is obviously telling some kind of allegorical story, what does that mean? It means that Matthew is willing to make up stories about resurrecting people from the dead in order to serve a
If
theological
it happened
point.
once.
And then the floodgates are open, especially because Matthew's...
Yeah, that's basically the argument here. What are your thoughts on this one, David?
Let me go ahead and read the passage. So this is...
I can put it up on the screen.
Okay.
Let me see here. There we go. All right, yeah, I'm going to start from verse 51. There we go. You guys can see it. All right. And behold, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom, and the earth shook and the rocks were split. Sounds like an earthquake, right?
Mhm.
Those
the earth shook.
those happen?
The earth shook and the rocks were split. Uh-huh.
Does that happen? Do earthquakes happen? Is that something
Yeah,
that we know
nothing,
about?
nothing strange here except for the timing. In other words, if you're talking about someone might make something up. Earthquakes happen lots of times in the world. So the issue would be the timing. If you're saying it happened right when Jesus died, then that's something that someone could be making up. So just to give the sort of reasoning here.
So next verse, the tombs were also opened, and many bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep.
That is something that could definitely happen in an earthquake. So earth is shaking, and you've got tombs, and they're in stone, and so on, and so tombs shake open. Okay, so that's something that could happen. But the weird part would be the timing so far. But go ahead.
And many bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep were raised.
Okay, so this is where they get the zombies claim.
And coming out of the tombs after his resurrection, and they went into the holy city and appeared to many.
Okay, so a couple of things here. One, this would be people that had died recently. This would be people that died recently. Why? If anyone's recognizing them as someone who died. In other words, this isn't like King David rising from the dead and appearing to people. This would have been, if people are recognizing them as someone who had died, this would be people who had recently died. And it's saying that some of them came to life. Some of them came to life and appeared to people in the city. Got that so far?
Yeah.
So the idea would be, as far as the argument goes, one, did this happen? And two, if it happened, why didn't other writers mention something like this? And if other people didn't mention this, does it sound like something that's made up? Here's the thing. You could totally grant that. So you got a couple of ideas here. One, this actually happened, and Matthew is the one who recorded it. Keep in mind, everyone has a limited amount of space with which to write a document. A scroll in the ancient world, if you want the longest scroll you could actually go and buy, I think it was like something like 30 feet and so on. That's why, by the way, Matthew, Luke, John, and Acts are all about the same length. That's the length of a scroll that you would buy for a document back then. So they all have to choose what they're going to include. So, and I'm saying that not everyone includes everything. And so if you want to say this happened and Matthew was the only one who recorded it, and why didn't the others record this as well? Well, maybe they were focused on other things. That's one direction you can go in. Two, you can go in the direction like Mike Licona and so on, where he describes this as a kind of language that people use and so on.
Apocalyptic.
Apocalyptic language. He's not actually claiming this happened. This is how you would describe something of tremendous significance or something like that. And then you'll have the idea that that this didn't happen. And so the question there would be, one, as Alex is pointing out, did Matthew think that it happened? Did he actually believe that it happened? Or did he know he was making that up? And if he knew that he was making that up, oopsie, what else is he making up? So those are the main possibilities that are on the table. But here's the thing. If you go with that last one and say, Matthew deliberately made this up. He deliberately made up this story. And they're like, uh-oh, what would that mean? Well, what it would mean is you can't trust material that's unique to Matthew. That's what it would mean. If material is unique to Matthew, like this, it's in Matthew, it's not in other places. If it's unique to Matthew and it's not found elsewhere, then if you think Matthew is making things up, then you wouldn't trust Matthew on material that's unique to Matthew. That wouldn't tell you anything about Paul or anyone else. It wouldn't tell you about the creed. It wouldn't tell you about Mark. It wouldn't tell you about material that's in Luke. It wouldn't tell you about that material that's in John. It wouldn't tell you about what the earliest church believed, because keep in mind, Matthew is decades after the events and so on. So would this cause you to would this cause you to reject the resurrection? I'll go ahead and say it here. If I believe that this was 100% an obvious lie by Matthew, I'd still believe in the resurrection, because my belief in the resurrection isn't based on this. So just wanted to be clear on that. But anyway, those are the possibilities there.
Yeah, one other thing that I wanted to point out is that I think this is blown way out of proportion. So like if you notice what it says here, and many bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep were raised. So it doesn't say like, that dozens of saints were raised, or that, because they obviously could count back then. So he could have specified exactly the number of saints that were raised. Yeah. I don't know if you knew that. But all he says is many. So many, but how many is that? We don't really know. Coming out of the tombs after his resurrection, and then they went into the holy city and appeared again to many. How many people did they appear to? We don't know. And also what's weird though is that if you're making this up, why not say that there was a bunch of them that came out and appeared to everyone? Like there was a feeding of the 5,000 that happened in front of a group of 5,000 people. Like why not make up that it happened in front of thousands and thousands of people and everyone saw this and it was this huge event that just did, if you're really trying to go hard into this apologetic, like make it up story and make it try to sound credible, then like go all the way. Don't just say like they appeared to many, or like a few people came out and appeared to a few other people. Like that doesn't really, if you're going to make it up, you would probably make it up and make it a little bit more grand.
Yeah. So what you're pointing out is, as far as what this says, this could be interpreted in multiple ways, according to believing that this actually happened. One, that could mean that 100 people appeared and were wandering through the streets and so on, or it could mean that 5 or 6 people who had died recently appeared to some people in the city, appeared to like family members, some of the apostles and things like that. And in other words, when you're saying many, appeared to many, it's like many witnesses of what this said. Not that they're like marching through the streets and talking to the religious leaders and shocking everyone and stuff. It's some people who had recently died came back and appeared to people.
But the people.
And what Cameron's pointing out is, if you're making up stories, you could kind of go bigger than this. Yeah.
And then the point would just be that like weird things happen, right? I was going to mention miracles and stuff. There are a lot of, they do indeed. I don't know if you guys have seen any of my stuff on Zaytoon, but we have some very highly well evidenced miracles that have been documented that are incredible. Have you guys checked out any of the Zaytoon stuff that I've produced or heard about?
We're not nerds. We're cool. And that name is a little too close to the Zaytuna Institute, which is a Muslim organization. So change your name.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, Zaytuna is
I just have one issue with
suburb.
Sorry. Go ahead. I'll add that later. Go ahead.
I was going to say Zaytuna is just the name of a suburb in Cairo, so that's where it comes from. In Egypt.
Thank you for that geography lesson. That's one of the important facts I'll need to know in case I'm ever on Jeopardy.
My issue with the conversation about these miraculous occurrences or the things that are stated in the Bible is that, and I know that this might be rather a personal thing on my behalf.
You're a committed naturalist, and you think that there's all this evidence for naturalism.
No, it might just be my personal preference and how I approach things. But even when it comes to the resurrection, it's like for me, the issue is not to confront the argument or the occurrence of the resurrection and to go into whether we can prove that it actually happened or not, and how it actually happened and how it actually didn't happen, or what actually happened. But that would be the biggest example. But then we come to minor things, such as the passage of the tombs shaking and a multitude of saints or of people walking among the people and being visible. And when we come to things like these are not issues that I personally, on a personal level, focus on and take as well. This is something miraculous. It obviously shows that there is something greater here at play, and this strengthens my faith. And I then and I have to counter those who doubt that these things happen. Like when I hear an atheist or a skeptic, for example, talk about how they don't believe that this happened, or how they have different explanations to this, it doesn't mean anything to me, because whether this happened or not, and how this happened, is not an important aspect to my evaluation on whether I want to follow this Christianity, or whether I want to believe in the Bible or not. And I guess I'm kind of curious to what extent this is a general issue to people out there. To what extent it is very, very important that the supernatural occurrences found in the Bible, in the New Testament especially, have to be, confirmed to be true, or have to be defended. To me, this is not very important.
Yeah, the reason why I think they emphasize this passage so much is because it's only mentioned by Matthew. And so it's only it's attested by a single source, and so it's an easy target because it sounds fantastical, and it's only mentioned by one source, and so they're just like, oh well, this has got to be obviously concocted, like it just doesn't happen, and because it's like this event that seems improbable on its face, and like I said, it only has one source, then that's what they're going to, and that's why they go to this, as opposed to trying to come up with an alternate. Yeah, instead of trying to give an alternate explanation for the resurrection, they'll go to something like this because it's way easier, because there's less evidence for it. We have this one source that talks about it, and really the reason why you would believe in something like this is, at least in my view, is because you've already got this other evidence for the resurrection, for Jesus establishing a church, for establishing the canon of Scripture, and then you believe everything that is in Scripture, and so therefore you believe something like this. Like that's the sort of chain of reasoning that would lead me to believe that something like this happened, as opposed to, oh well, I just read this one thing and I come out believing it. There's a sort of
it's even
epistemic chain.
But it's even like I was just pointing out how the whole this occurrence, this instance of people coming out of the tombs and walking among the people, is of lesser significance in comparison to the resurrection. But even when it comes to the resurrection, for example, to me, it has very, very little impact, and it's I don't know if it has any at all. The whole discussion about did the resurrection happen or not. It's like
it did for Paul.
I personally, it has very, 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 very extremely little impact, and I don't start from a position, and I can now say this as somebody who actually believes and who professes to believe and who states the belief every single day. I don't start out with, okay, did the resurrection actually happen? And yes, we can indeed confirm that it happened. Therefore, I now believe. It is rather different in nature, so much that I simply do believe in the Bible, and I do believe in in Christianity, and I do believe in the narrative. And when it comes to the resurrection, I do believe and affirm that Jesus died, was crucified, was buried, and resurrected and ascended and so on. And I don't feel the need to concern myself with whether this actually happened or not, whether we can establish whether it happened or not, and so on. And I wonder how much this is an issue to the average person out there.
Yeah, so I guess the idea there is AP's thinking along the lines of I've accepted Christianity as the way, and therefore I believe in what Christianity teaches, and therefore if Christianity teaches the resurrection, I believe in the resurrection, as opposed to people are going kind of in the reverse direction of saying, okay, I'm examining historical evidence and I'm concluding that Jesus rose from the dead, and based on that, now I have to believe in the claims of Christianity. And then you have Alex and Rhett, and they're saying, aha, well, you have all these sources about Jesus rising from the dead and appearing to people, but look, here's this thing that only appears in one spot, and we can't understand why other people wouldn't have reported this. Therefore, looks like it's really false. Therefore, you can start throwing out everything because these guys are just making things up. That last move seems pretty sloppy, by the way. Because I mean, again, you'd have to, if you want to assume that if you want to say that Matthew is making things up, okay, how does that connect you to, let's say, Paul making up all the appearances to him and to Peter and to James and to all the apostles and so on? I don't know. It's really weird. It would be really weird. You could grant everything they're saying. I could grant everything they're saying right now, and it would not affect my belief in Jesus' resurrection at all. And AP would say you could grant everything they're saying right now. It wouldn't affect your belief in resurrection because you're not basing it on this kind of reasoning in the first place.
I just have one question, which is that somebody in the chat said that sounds heretical of AP. Did I just say something that I didn't mean to say, or did somebody misunderstand anything? Did I say anything that goes against the narrative?
It sounds like you're saying you don't care if Jesus rose from the dead or not. And we're going, what the heck is he talking about? It's kind of a big deal whether Jesus rose from the dead or not. AP
That's not what I was saying.
I've got this pulled up here. 1 Corinthians 15.
That's not what I was saying. What I was saying, I want to clarify that. What I was saying is not that it doesn't matter to me whether Jesus was resurrected or not. In fact, I do every day repeat the creed in which I affirm that he was indeed that he lived and he did everything as it is stated in the Bible, and he is God. He is the Son of God. He died. He was crucified. He died and was buried and rose from the dead, and so on. And he will come again. I affirm all of these things. My point was not that it doesn't matter to me whether he was resurrected or not. My point was that the discussion about whether this actually happened or not, and whether we can prove that it actually happened or not, is completely irrelevant to me, because I don't really concern myself with can we actually prove that it happened? Can we actually prove that it didn't happen? And so on. I don't care. I really don't care.
Some of us care about truth, AP.
So
some of us care about truth and arguments.
And this was just my personal thing of it, which is why I'm asking how much the proving the reality of it matters to other people, because to me the discussion is already closed. I believe in it. That's it.
All right, so AP is a heretic. Guess we should move on. Just kidding. All right, Haj, moving to super chats. Haj says, "Is Mubahala a spectator sport pay-per-view?"
That would be fun. That seems like a skit we could make about the ultimate Mubahala showdown, and everyone's watching and cheering and stuff like that, waiting for something to happen. And one guy eventually coughs or sneezes, and they say, "You see, this is a proof."
Oh, man. This guy left faith because he realized Jesus was a Jew who didn't worship Ezra.
That's a good point.
He knew the Jews worship Ezra, but didn't want to have faith in Ezra, the Son of God. Ezra worship shall become uppermost foremostly. Hail Ezra.
Powerful. All valid points.
All right. There is no ascension narrative in Mark or Matthew.
Powerful.
All right, Dawa Troll again. I challenge Hijab to a Mubahala on Modern Day Debate or on CC. He'd be scared of my Zabiba. Come on, Hijab.
Yo, Hijab, where you at?
I know he's watching.
He is watching.
He watches every CC stream. MWE, Mubahala Wrestling Entertainment.
That'd be a good one.
All this Mubahala stuff. Wow.
I'm about to post a video of me challenging Mike Winger to Mubahala.
Who's got the biggest Zabiba? Is that what it's called?
Yep, Zabiba.
Yep. Zabiba, yeah.
Yep.
You should challenge him to a Zabiba challenge. Who's got a biggest Zabiba? All right. Zabiba is what you get kneeling in adoration. No,
Zabniba.
Zabniba. David doesn't know anything about that. He's just
No, because I don't want to pray like a
Low
Muslim. I found out
church.
that if you bow and pray, then you're a Muslim.
Hey, wait a minute. Perfect opportunity to clarify what I was saying. So here's Gray's
Oh
174
my goodness! Why is he so
saying,
obsessed?
Apostle Prophet, if I went back in time with a Panasonic video camera in front of the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea, would the little LCD screen show a man walk out of that tomb? That's the question. My answer, yes, it would.
Yes. Yes, it would.
That's it.
Indeed. Indeed. Miracles
it.
happen. They're amazing. Believe in miracles. Oh, hi, David. Oh, hi, AP.
Hi, Sonny.
Beast.
James quotes the Septuagint in Acts, which shows it's fiction. What? Wow.
Your boy Steve here is posting some really dumb objections.
Wait.
Right.
What? I don't even understand what's the
He's-
point
The
there?
Septuagint? Yeah.
He's saying that if James were quoting the Old Testament, he wouldn't be quoting the Septuagint. He would be saying
That's false. That's
He would
false.
be.
That doesn't make
He would
sense.
be. Yeah,
That's false.
the claim is he would be quoting he'd be quoting probably Aramaic or something like that, or Hebrew, and therefore when they record him as quoting the Septuagint version, this proves that it's all fiction. And so you got a couple. One that I said that's stupid because one, if you have some sort of church council or something like that, one, why wouldn't you think that he's quoting the Septuagint? Two, if you had why would you think that James wouldn't know Greek when Alexander the Great had spread Greek all over the place? In other words, these guys would have been bilingual. And three, if you were, let's say, Luke, and you're writing the gospel, and you're writing the book of Acts in Greek, and you had to quote what James said, and you knew that James quoted something, why would you not use the Septuagint, which is what Greek readers would be familiar with? And so to conclude, it's just sloppy, but it's pretty standard.
The Septuagint was available for at least 100 years before Jesus.
Isn't it the general historical understanding as well that James and the others would have been familiar with and would have made use of the Septuagint?
Of course they
It's
would.
not- Yeah, it's not like it was an invention that came into existence later or anything.
Yeah.
It was already around. It was created by Jews themselves to expand knowledge of the Bible for Greek speakers and for the common people to access the text. It was used by Jewish people who were under Roman occupation in Rome in Greek speaking places, and it would have been used by people at the time as well. So
David should actually find this argument convincing because he's a Protestant. The Septuagint has the Deuterocanonicals. Got him.
Let's start a war.
Got him. He's like, whoa.
Yes, I have to believe anything that was translated into Greek.
Rumology says today is Anzac Day in Australia. The Turks should know what it is about, lest we forget.
Yeah, it's about the Australian and New Zealand troops and all that being deployed during the war against the Ottoman Empire to Turkey.
It's Ottermen.
And fighting and being killed and stuff. It's pretty based.
Urinating broom is back again. People back then didn't have modern science. They didn't know that people don't come back from the dead. They didn't know that dead people stay dead. All true facts. All very good information. Yeah, everyone back then just didn't know anything. They didn't know if they were hallucinating just, half the time. They just didn't know.
Yeah, the apostles came out and said, hey, Jesus rose from the dead. And everyone says, who cares? Everyone rises from the dead all the time.
How many times have we seen this happen?
Yeah.
All right, OJ says, debate Professor Dave explains. Oh, man. Do you guys know who that is?
Yes, he's the
AP
worst
does.
person.
It's like it's his nemesis. It's AP's nemesis on the issue of Israel.
Oh, really?
Well, the thing is, I only heard about him before in the past because he was making science videos and stuff like that, and I was kind of confused when October 7 happened. When the terrorist attack, the Islamic terrorist attack happened against Israel. Everybody started talking about Israel and all that, and then he came into the discussion, and he was on Twitter, and he was just, I think he's been suspended because of how nasty he is, but he was attacking me brutally in every post I was making. He was in the comments just with extremely
Humiliating you.
foul language, and I eventually said to him, "Hey, if you like this so much, if you like talking about this so much, how about we debate? You and I, we have a moderated debate." And he rejected it, and then I blocked him. That's all. But the guy is very, very nasty.
See, AP is running from Professor Dave, you see. And then AP was like, fine, I'll teach you a lesson. I'll convert to Christianity.
Mr. Man Dude, I think the case for the resurrection is a good start, but it's important to combine it with other arguments, prophecy, fine-tuning, etc., to build a stronger cumulative case. Yeah, of course, the cumulative case is going to be the strongest case that you can make. Of course. Christian Theologetics. Andrew Loke does a good job responding to Dale Allison. I have not seen his stuff. Yeah, Andrew Loke has been on Capturing Christianity a few times. Very smart guy. He's got really good work on the Kalam cosmological argument.
I never heard of him, so.
Yeah, well, you haven't heard of a lot of people.
How good could he be?
All right. From Mojab's lawyer. No, David Wood is not faith. It's an institution position.
Intuition position.
Intuition position.
Oh, yeah, the guy did say that. He did say, I got an intuition that... Get that? He's saying if you're a Christian, you believe in the resurrection, it's just a faith position, but he has an intuition that it's all wrong.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it's not a faith position. His is an intuition position.
Nice. I love that picture of hijab. Great picture.
It's beautiful.
Wish I could zoom in on it.
That's what he is, part-time male stripper Muhammad Hijab.
Urinating Broom says, methinks the resurrection isn't just any miracle. One could argue it deals directly with the biggest existential problem for humans, death. And that, coupled with Jesus' ethical character, raises the prior probability to me. Yeah, I think what raises the prior for me would be something along the lines of Swinburne, his argument that there's good reasons to think God exists, and there's good reasons to think God has reason to raise Jesus from the dead.
Yeah, there is something interesting there about kind of Jesus seems really special in a ton of different ways. So it's not just some random guy and you're saying he rose from the dead. It's a guy who seems to be really special in a ton of different ways. And it's that guy. It's that guy who's also claimed to rise from the dead.
All right, next one. Change comes from within. Resurrection, not just prophesied in Torah, Genesis 3:15, but also proof God can bring back from the dead, John 11:24, and Daniel 13:12. We will live again on the last day.
Powerful.
Resurrection in line with Ecclesiastes 9:5, the dead know nothing. So why Jesus said Lazarus is sleeping, John 11, hence the saying rest in peace, and why Martha said, I know he will rise on the last day.
Powerful.
A lot of powerful comments tonight. Sassy Dan, if Alex thinks Matthew is lying, why doesn't he challenge him to a mubahala?
Mubahala. Good point.
Mubahala.
No, he emphasized the mubahala. That's how they say it sometimes.
Powerful.
Oh, change. AP, don't let them bully you into submission. You do your thing, your journey, your thoughts. It's only Jesus and Yahweh, no one else.
Yeah, you do you.
You do you, bro. Don't let them
you.
reason with you. Don't let us talk to you.
Be your best you. Just go live in a cave and decide what's true.
Be your truest self, dude. Don't listen to anyone else.
The thing is, to be very serious and honest here, to change comes from within. I think I have just so many years of internal torture behind me that I am far, far away from any position where I would, at this point be impacted by discussions about what did and did not happen. I think I'm settled, and I'm happy. Thank you.
All right. A pusillanimous ether grape on Zabiba machine of the cow says, David, you were never a true convict. Cameron, you were never a true Protestant. AP, you were never a true atheist. Why not convert to Scientology?
See,
Powerful. I love the picture there, though.
I know. That's a good one. That's like your high school picture, right? From high school?
yes.
This is a picture of him that we posted somewhere years ago, and that I then used in all our live stream, our
Yes.
live stream thumbnails. And he
Yes.
always
very
like, what if you
cute.
get a different picture of me? And I'm like, oh no.
I think this was from 5-6 years ago or so.
Yeah, you grew out the beard so you could be, because you knew you were going to be Orthodox, right? You had to.
Yeah.
You had to get all
Well,
nasty.
That's the funny thing. I saw that online that Orthodox Christians have beards. So I think it's a requirement to also have a beard. But then I started going to church and noticed that I'm the only one who has a beard, and I'm kind of confused now.
Yeah. You know, going to leave the Orthodox Church.
Yeah, I kind of thought everyone there is an ortho bro, and then I found out it's not really like that. So I don't know, man. It's weird.
Dawa Troll says AP is still a cat human. Cats don't care.
That's true. Cats are very curious, though, so I'm still curious.
AP doesn't care about the resurrection. Clip it.
No, that's not true. It's not true. How dare you?
That is going to be clipped.
It is going to be clipped. Yeah, and your follow-up is not going to be clipped.
Good.
Mr. Man Dude, because thou hast seen me, thou hast believed. Blessed are they that have not seen and yet have believed. I knew what you meant.
Exactly. That's what I meant. That's what I mean. That's what I mean.
This is a nice comment. Thank you guys. God bless you guys for everything that you do. God bless you too.
Thank you.
Very nice comment. Alex M says, can we talk about how AP has obliterated David at the bookshelf game now? He is approaching full form.
No, he's cheating. He's using fancy little lights, which I can do as well. I can do that too. I just choose not to and let my books speak for themselves, not to wrap them up in this pretty light wrapping. Come on.
Look at just look at have a look at this. Have a look at this and have a look at
Oh
David's.
man, I didn't even notice the zigzag.
He's got some zigzag, but he blocks it. He blocks it.
Yeah, why? That needs to be
Because he's a
focal
weakling.
point.
I think it's all quite self-evident. David should be quiet.
no.
From now.
Mine is
Someone
super
said
cool.
Matt,
Look at this. Look
Matt
at this.
Frad has a message
Look at this.
here.
Look at this. Look when I show it in all its glory. What?
That's kind of lame, but yeah.
What? Look at that. If I were to light that up, if I were to light all that goodness up with a fancy light, it would blind people from overexposure to sheer awesomeness. That's why.
you should go
don't like
live
that.
like that. You got the tiny,
Hello, everyone.
tiny little David there.
Hold up. Let's see.
Hello,
Hey,
I'm
everyone.
David.
Oh man.
Beast.
All right, guys. Well, I think that's going to do it for us tonight. I appreciate you coming on and discussing Rhett and Alex's arguments against the resurrection. David, were you convinced? Are you?
No, I mean, think
we're all
like
atheists now.
yeah. I mean, think what we were just shown. It's a guy who doesn't know too much using standard stuff, and it's. Over time, I've become more persuaded that naturalism is true without really any reason for thinking that. But and then I've got an explanation, I think, for the resurrection. They were deceived somehow by I know not what, and so I now reject it. And anyone who says they believe in it is doing so by faith, even though using my definition of faith that I just applied to them, I have all kinds of faith in everything that I believe in. And so, wow, great. Mind blowing. Mind blown.
Mind blown.
All right.
Before
Powerful.
watching this, I was an imam, and now I am a Christian.
It's only strengthened my iman.
We did get one good thing out of this stream, which was at, what was it, minute 59:18, something like that.
I already clipped it. I already put it on my
Christianity
soundboard.
is
It's already. Christianity is based.
Was it 59? Was it? Yeah, it's 59.
Yeah, 59 something. You're gonna hear it on all my
listen to it.
live streams from
Let's
now on.
listen to it one more time. We'll get one more.
This is
listen
the
out of it.
historical claim upon which Christianity is based. And like you
There it is.
Christianity is based. AP is as
Christianity
adding
is
to his
based.
collection of people from various backgrounds, atheists, Jewish rabbi. Everyone acknowledges Christianity is based.
It's so funny when you the way I clipped it. It just goes Christianity is based.
Christianity is
Alex
based.
O'Connor.
That is so good. All right, guys. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for everyone tuning in. Hopefully you got something out of this. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you want to support my work, if you've watched till the very end of this video, go to patreon.com/capturingchristianity to support us. And thank you guys. All right.